Welcome, everyone. Ashland Planning Board meeting of May 9th, 2024. Just want to remind everyone that the meeting is being broadcast and recorded. So first on our agenda, as always, is the clerk's report. Kate?
Yes, Madam Chair. We received 2 correspondence to the Planning Board from the last meeting. There's one particularly that I do think we need to discuss as a board. It was a comment about the 3 years a application was in front of the board, and that was we did not have a case in front of us for 3 years, so I think that we do need to confirm what kind of response we want to give. I think it's important to
yeah, I'm trying to remember that if I 3 years in front of the board.
Yeah, so a local resident wrote in and
for Zoom.
Oh, sorry.
A local resident wrote in, and it's related to the 40B application at 10 to 60 Main Street.
Oh, okay.
And that the
Oh,
planning board, you know, it's sort of, I think this is very bad for the town if we don't correct the record. That they applied on July 25th, 2022, and on May 31st, 2023, which is less than a year, they had a giant. They were requesting a continuance for I think about 3 months, and as we recall, there was many continuances in that time period. So my point of bringing up discussion is that the current draft samples that the clerk is authorized on behalf of the board does not cover that, and I think we have to make sure that we respond in appropriate. That's important and related to.
Okay, so is this something that you want to talk about under 10 to 60, or is this something?
Well, I think the clerk report to get a response to respond, but it's about so.
Yeah, I think I know. It's the letter from Mike Kane.
Yes.
So, so why don't we? I was anticipating that we would, if someone wanted to discuss that would be under 10 to 60
Okay.
Main. But out of that might be, you're concerned about correcting the factual information, which may be in a response, which might be just Peter saying just a correction that this happened on this date, this happened on that date. Just so
I mean, I think so, but unfortunately, there was also a monthly newspaper that said that the applicant was frustrated with the planning board, and I have the letter that says it wasn't. They were complimentary of the planning board, so I think it's a little bit bigger of an issue that we probably have to possibly have some kind of statement from the board. It can just go on the website. We don't have to try to publish it or ask the paper for a correction, but I think I don't see how it's helpful to the professionalism of the board nor the town to have people thinking that.
Okay, so why don't we wait to discuss that under 10 to 60?
Sure.
Because it seems a little beyond the clerk's report discussion at this point. So why don't we wait to discuss that at 10 to 60, and we can see what, as a board, we want to do, if anything. Okay? All right. Are there other correspondences caught up
There was
today?
two that were received. One I responded to the clerk, and one that I could not respond as clerk.
Okay.
And after last meeting, I did send some that were not responded. I haven't heard if they were or not. So.
I'm still working through that. I think 90% of them have been responded to. So I'm working to confirm that.
Okay. I was going to say, I didn't see anything come through that I thought was in my boat, but if you disagree and think that something is in my boat, let me know. Okay.
Will do.
All right. Thank you. All right, so now we have item 3, approval not required, an A&R plan for Myrtle Street. I will let Peter introduce that.
Thank you. So we had an application for 8084 and 94 Myrtle Street. This is the rest home on Myrtle Street. As you're leaving town, this is going to be on your left-hand side. Right now, the land area consists of 3 lots. 0 is vacant. 84 is considered the rest home, and then 94 is a single-family house. And so right now they're trying to reorchestrate they're really, in my eyes, reorganizing the lots. The 2 lots that have structures on them, 84 and 94, They are creating 2 conforming lots. Each lot has greater than 150 feet of frontage, and each lot has 30,000 square feet of frontage. Our parcel known as 0, that is a fairly large lot consistent of 2.5 acres. And so that does have 150 feet of frontage and greater than 30,000 square feet. And because it is greater than 2 acres, it does not have to meet the Rule of 22. But furthermore, we do have the surveyor on the call, Brian Hill. Brian Hill comes to the meeting tonight from Land Planning Incorporated, and he is going to show us what the proposal is. So Brian, please feel free to share your screen. I also have an A&R on the table, and the planning board members also do have 18 by 20 printouts.
And just before we get started, I should have said at the beginning that we obviously have 3 board members here. Marcela Arjona, who is online, is also one of our board members. Anna is going to be coming shortly, and Amanda, our alternate member, I think is going to be joining us a little later in the evening as she can. So just to make that clear for everybody. All right, so we can look at this plan?
Yeah, Brian, take it away, please.
All right, good. Can you see my screen okay?
I can.
Okay, so we have, like Peter said, this is a very simple A&R plan. I'll try to get through this quickly. I know you have a big meeting tonight. So we'll start with Lot 3, the single-family home. This is 94 Myrtle Street. Currently, the lot line is this dashed line, and so we're adding parcel A to 94, which makes it a total of 30,000 square feet. The purpose here is to try to make conforming lots. There is a setback to the garage, the 15.8, the 9.3. Those are existing non-conforming setbacks, but the new lot line meets all of the setbacks, the side setback to the building. And then we'll go on to Lot 2. Lot 2 is the rest area lot. This is number 84. And as you can see, there's a total frontage of 166.4 proposed. You can see parcel B, that's the land we're adding to it, which gives it a total of 32,655 square feet. And then we'll move on to Lot 1, which is the big lot. Lot 1 has the minimum required frontage. And it's like Peter said, it's over 2 acres, which means that it does not need to meet the irregularity factor. I should mention that Lot 2 and Lot 3 do meet the irregularity factor, the 84 and 94. And so we have 3 lots. They're all accessed from Myrtle Street. They all have frontage and access to Myrtle Street. There's no steep slopes or ledge or wetlands or anything that would prevent access to Lot 1, the vacant lot. And Lot 2 and Lot 3 are obviously accessed over their existing driveways. So I think I touched on everything. I don't know, does anyone have any questions?
I just have one question. It might be a question for Peter. When you talked about the what is it, a shed or a garage over there that's non-conforming because it was an existing garage,
Yeah.
that doesn't have any effect because we're not dealing with that property. We're not making a lot non-conforming.
No.
Because it's an existing condition and we're dealing with the other side of the lot. Is that
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Correct.
Does anyone have any questions about what's happening here?
There's just a periphery, like a question that may not be germane to the plan itself, but I just wonder if this is just a reorganization of the pieces of land, and if there's any plans for the structures that exist there at all.
I don't know the client's plan for this. Perhaps they intend to sell lots or develop lots. I don't really know. But they wanted us to create conforming lots.
Got it. Thank you.
It's a mixed use because of the rest house and that. Is that why it's mixed use?
It's not mixed use. The rest house, I mean, the rest house is existing.
So under permit approval sought, mixed use is what's checked.
It should be residential. It's not mixed use.
Okay.
That's just, it's a residential A lot. The rest home is a protected use under residential, and it's allowed and it's existing.
So that needs to be corrected.
That, just on the application, yes. They're just creating two conforming residential A lots here.
So is that something you'll just correct with the application? or
Yeah, I
the-
can correct that with the application. You know, if the board wants, we can come back at the next meeting, and Bill and I can work to kind of work out that matter. And they can submit a new application. Bill, just to give you a heads up on the application process, it kind of slipped by, but we checked off mixed use under the uses there. And I don't know if you were the one that actually did the application. So maybe, but if the board would like a new application to be obviously a revised application, it's an A&R plan, so there's no public hearing, there's no notification. We can do that, just to make sure it's clean for both the applicant and the town, and then kind of move forward through that process.
And the applicant in this case is the owner, or it says
Correct.
prospective purchaser or tenant?
So this is the owner of the property.
So that what's selected is prospective purchaser as well, so,
Right there.
Oh, the prospective purchaser. So this land is under agreement.
okay.
Is that what, Bill, is that what you understand? That on the application, you've checked off prospective purchaser?
Oh, I'm sorry. The attorney filled out the application. I'm not familiar with what they decided to go with.
So is
Okay.
the name on the sheet Siddiqa, last name Siddiqa? Is that the owner, or who is that? Like, I think that's our question, right?
Yeah, I don't have an answer. To tell you the truth, I was really focused on the lots to make sure that those were conforming. I can tell you the lots that are being created are conforming, but that's a good catch, Deepa. So, you know, obviously with the mixed use checked off here, you know, we can table this and come back at the next meeting if that's appropriate. And I can get the board answers for those questions.
Yeah, I think, because I kind of agree, it would be a little odd that we'd approve something for somebody else's lot. Like, I wouldn't want someone to be able to do that to my own house lot, right? So I think
Because the owner, on the last page, the owner's name seems to be Woods' last name.
And that they are the long-term center for New
Yeah,
England
so
Incorporated.
So the Irshad Siddiqui may be the purchaser, it seems like, so,
They are, there's an X right above their name.
correct, but
Yeah.
this was, what I understood was this application was by the owner, but that does not seem to be the case.
I agree. So it seems like the applicant's agent, who's from Fletcher Tilton, who I had a conversation with regarding the lots and the conformity, they are representing the buyer, and the owner in this instance is the long-term center for New England. And I don't know what the relationship is. I assume they have a PNS that has not been provided.
Yeah.
But that we can request that. And then at that point, what the overall end goal is for these 3 lots is their business. But as long as the lots are conforming, that's what we're mostly interested in.
So we could make the A&R decision contingent upon the purchase and sale then? Right, I think, because if they didn't, well, again, I'm just thinking if it was my house, good catch, Deep, I wouldn't want someone to be able to file this, right? So we need some language that they're authorizing.
I think they are because
They're signing the
the owners
application.
above, by signing,
Yeah, no.
if the applicant is not the owner, please have the owner sign above or submit a letter of permission to the application. So I think it's presumed that if the owner's signing, they're authorizing.
So I have the information on the long-term centers of New England from the Secretary of State's website. So President Thomas E. Wood, Treasurer John Harrington, Secretary Matthew Sweeney, Director Thomas Woods, Director John Harrington, Director Matthew Sweeney.
So Woods is one of the owners.
Yeah.
Woods he's president of long-term Center of New England.
And they own all 3 lots right now. They own the
Right
full
now,
property.
they own all 3
Yeah, they own all
lots.
3.
And
And
there's
all
trying-
3 lots are conforming.
All 3 lots are conforming, correct.
are being made conforming.
Are
with the
being made
Yep.
conforming,
Being
yes, yes.
Yep.
As proposed in the plan, they would become conforming lots. That is correct. And under the A&R statute, that's the major, that's the hurdle, that's the bar that they have to meet.
So then besides the checking for the mixed use, because it's a residential and not mixed use, which is just, I assume the person thought it's mixed use, like there's a single-family home and there's a group home. So it seemed
Correct.
like there's 2 different uses, kind of a misunderstanding of the term. But it sounds like then that's the only thing that's off. Is that right? Mm-hmm. So,
We could approve it contingent on that clarification, assuming that they were confused.
I would
Are
feel
you saying because they aren't on the same parcel? Because there isn't the rest home a different use? You said it was a permitted use in a zone?
yeah, it's just that a mixed use generally talks about residential and commercial on the same property.
On the same property.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
so that's why it was, that term was
Correct.
a little confusing for us.
And I believe the long-term care center is a use that's exempt under 40A, excuse me, 40, section 3 of 40A. So I think I would feel most comfortable to just come back at the next planning board meeting and take a look at it. Bill, would that be okay with you? If we move this to the next planning board agenda?
I mean, yeah, I know the client's anxious to get this done, but if we have to, we have to. I prefer to, if we could move forward, it'd be great, but if we have to, we have to.
Okay.
So I'll leave it up to you guys.
Yeah, so it seems like, unless I hear from anyone, it seems like we don't have any questions or concerns about the actual moving of the lot lines, but we want to make sure the application is clean, because we have had applications come back or to us that were unclean in the past, right, that we had to clean up someone else's mistake. So it'd be best to make sure all of that is clear. So does anyone have any questions? Otherwise, we'll continue it for 2 weeks and we'll take care of it then.
I'll make a motion to continue the approval not required plan 08494 Myrtle Street to our next meeting, which is May 23rd.
23rd, yes.
Second that.
And a roll call vote?
Deepa Venkatai.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcelo Hona, aye.
Catherine Jersey guide.
And Tricia Kendall, aye. Okay, so we'll wrap this up in 2 weeks and have it done.
All right, Bill, we'll come back in 2 weeks, but you and I can touch base early next week.
Okay, great.
All right, thank you.
All right, we'll see you.
All right, thank you. Moving on to item number 4 on our agenda, public hearings. The first one is 6 Chestnut Street. So Peter, can you just let us know where we are with 6 Chestnut Street?
Sure, so 6 Chestnut Street, the applicant and the applicant's agent is here, Alan. 6 Chestnut Street has, since we have seen 6 Chestnut Street, they went back to the design review and they submitted some new renderings, which are in front of everybody. And so, just to make note of that. And then the other thing is, just to make reference to, is that Design Review Committee did send back a list of comments that are in everyone's folder that we can go through. And the applicant's surveyor / engineer, Terry, has sent, I believe, a revised plan, moving the bike rack to a new location, if that's correct. But I know that was part of the conversation with the Design Review Committee. And the applicant's agent is here to answer any questions or concerns. And that's where we stand tonight, to start to review the process.
So the plan in front of us, I see. Okay, I see the bike rack. So the bike rack is in space 18.
Correct. The bike rack moved from space 12 to space 18.
Yep,
And
at our
that-
last meeting.
At our last meeting. That was a big change.
So, and I think at the Design Review Committee, and we will obviously go through those notes, they had asked about turning it 90 degrees. Was that it?
Correct.
Was that- Yeah, okay.
And I believe that was acceptable to the applicant? Yep. And then also the renderings were updated. And this is the first time the planning board is seeing the new updated renderings as provided.
My immediate reaction is, that is very Texas-looking landscaping. And my second reaction is that building across the street really look like that? That looks like some sort of fancy apartment building that we have not yet approved.
No, it is not correct. We talked.
I'm distracted by that.
We talked about that a little bit before the meeting.
Okay.
And it was talked about a little bit at the Design Review Committee. That was the meeting I left our 10 to
Okay.
60 discussion to attend. So I did attend that meeting, and yeah, I think their designers took some artistic liberty with the
I'm like,
background.
That's a lot of window
yeah.
sites. It's like,
So that building is not approved in the
Okay.
background.
we tend to be very specific about renderings. I'm like, whoa. It's like a fancy looking hotel thing.
Yeah, so when we're ready, if we want to go through the Design Review Committee's list.
Yep.
Like I said, I was there, so anything that needs interpretation, you were there for part of it, Peter, you came out at the end.
I was there for the part of it for the last meeting. Obviously, we ended the planning board's meeting on, that we were having, and I did jump on this meeting.
Is this landscaping rendering accurate to what Design Review is envisioning with the blooming trees and all that? Like-
Yes and
Okay.
no.
Okay.
I mean, they showed these renderings, and Kathy Rooney had talked about, and some of them were labeled, I think, again,
The
you know,
lush tropical plants.
in
Yeah.
these programs, it's often hard to represent exactly the plant you're intending to put there. The
Yep.
repertoire just isn't that big in a lot of cases. So, but they were going to clarify, so there were exact plants specified that Becca, I think, had okayed, right? Because they were on the,
Correct. So our
Conservation
conservation
list.
agent
Yeah.
has put together a list, and it's on our website. It's all native plantings. And so,
yeah, so the ones that were on the original plan had been taken from that list. Kathy Rooney's comment was that looking at the plants that were chosen, she didn't think that some of them would survive that well in that location, because as you know, it's completely open to the sun. So she was going to provide a list also from the Conservation Commission list, so from the proper list of plants that she would recommend instead. I do not believe we've received that list yet, as far as I know?
I do not believe we have.
Okay. So that would be one of the things, we need to get that list from Kathy Rooney. She did say that she would provide it in order to, so that they could swap out, maybe not in the image, because like I said, it's hard to pick the exact bush, from these programs oftentimes. But to swap them out on the plan with ones that she would recommend. Does that make sense?
Yes,
But
thank you.
so far, that information hasn't been provided.
Okay. I mean, overall, I think it looks good as far as, it seems to fit the corner. I don't particularly have comments on the design elements, because I think we're renovating a building that's already there. So there seems like there's only so much that can really be done.
Did you want to
I
go through
agree.
the,
Yes,
sorry,
have
go
no
ahead,
com-
Marcelo.
No, I agree with Anna. I have no comments either.
Okay. Then why don't we just run through the
Yep.
design review committee list? So under existing conditions of butters, they had asked the question about they had wondered about moving the dumpster, and they made a note that the planning board had decided that the dumpster didn't need to be relocated, and that the owners were talking about doing other mitigation to solve whatever rat problem is there, because they don't want that problem either, right? So, and that was, obviously, seemed good to us, because we didn't want the dumpster closer to either road. So, so that would still go forward. We can have that as a condition. Some of the notes they have are just notes. They had asked for, the design review committee had asked for non-permanent movable planters where possible close to the building, to kind of just add some more green close to the building. Terry, this last name I can't remember, the site surveyor had noted that the planters can only be located in certain locations because of the wetland question. So even planters sitting on top of pavement have to be carefully located, so, and can't be in the flood zone. So he said that that's possible, but they can't just be anywhere we want. They have to be in certain locations. So I think the applicant was okay with doing that, providing a few planters, right in the front of the building, movable planters.
To my understanding, basically the area in itself, if we were to put any planters, it would interfere with the actual 24-foot
With-
line for,
The delivery truck.
no, for the emergency service.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
that was kind of dismissed.
Okay.
Because there really wasn't any area feasible to add the planters within an area that would not affect the program. It was basically a 3-foot space right in front, but then when we went to address
The flood storage issue, those planter boxes still have to be accounted for within the flood storage. And so, talking to conservation, those are an element that are difficult to put to place in the front.
Okay, so that's from conservation,
Correct.
because last time on the meeting, Terry was saying that there was this little strip that it could be in.
I think it's a very thin strip. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but also you have to take into consideration in the flood storage component
Yeah.
of everything.
So I guess, looking at the renderings, I guess the question is to the planning board, is it important that there's more plantings in movable planters somewhere out in front of the building? I'm bringing this up because this was a design review committee in their notes and something they had talked about. I don't want to.
I mean, for me, it's a balance between the current space and the presentable, like the new space. So what I like is that there is more green space now in the front than there is currently. So as far as the planters, I'm if the applicant is willing, that's great, but I'm not sure I'll require them. I feel like there's adequate, reasonable effort to add more green space than there currently is, and that is good for me without the planters. But if the applicant is into planters, go for it.
Understood.
Maybe
And
some cactuses
to go with the
to
Texas
go with the
theme.
Texas theme.
You won't have to worry about the hot sun.
Those usually survive even me at my house. So,
Anyone else have a?
yep.
No,
Okay.
I think.
So I don't think
I guess I'm saying, I don't think we need to require it for this project in light of the additional green space.
I agree with you. I think there's a lot going on a lot going on in this site with the access that the fire department wants, and they're adding the green space will be much more than it is now.
Yeah.
And so, it might just be adding a little problem in there versus solving a problem. So, okay. But let me know if someone has a different opinion. Okay, so the next point, I'm on point 3, on page 2 of the design review committee notes, and this was a question about safety and security. I thought this was an important point, because once they build out the raised concrete curb part of this building, you will be stepping right into the building, not on a curb and then into the building. So, Peter, I think you talked to Doug about this. Can
Yeah,
you-
so the other, well, not to go back to the planters, but the other situation that came up was safety, right? And so there's not gonna be that, right now, there's about a 4 to 6 inch reveal, on what I would call the podium to order your ice cream. So that's gonna be gone. And so with that said, safety did come up in front of the design review committee, speaking with our building commissioner, Doug Scott, Becca Solomon, our conservation agent. We decided that there's two options, right? Number one, there could be curb stops put in front of the building, maybe 2 feet off the building. So if any was to bump into them, obviously they would not be bumping into the building. And/or they could put bollards 4 feet on center going across those windows. And so it was really up to the applicant of what they would prefer most. But the building commissioner did state that those were the two options regarding safety that could be implemented in front of the building. And so I think that is part of the conversation where if you get into the planter conversation,
Is that somehow related to that? Like,
it's not related, but I
was
think,
design review thinking of the planters as a safety feature?
I don't think so, no.
Okay.
I think they were just thinking about it as a green. I think some
Okay.
people do kind of cross-contaminate both of them. However, I think we have to put safety above green
Yeah.
landscaping. And for
Can you
this,
kind of find a way can you create what's it called, a bollard that has a green
No,
element?
they do have like rated
a
bollards that
thing?
can be planters, yeah. I don't know that we should require them because they are possibly more
Yeah.
expensive. They also look nicer than stuff, but yeah, they do exist.
and the size of them, though, is prohibitive because you're also within the flood zone that you would have to therefore calculate for more flood storage. So it is a double-edged sword, right? When you come to, okay, how big of a bollard, how big of a planting? But from a safety concern, two elements that that I spoke to the building commissioner about was a curb stop that could be there, and that would not have a negative impact on the flood storage, and/or you could put bollards in lining the front of the building for safety purposes.
Yeah, and it's, just as doing some research, I guess, I went to Murphy's. They're not open, so I didn't get ice cream yet. But to look at what they had, and so they had the what are they called?
Curb stop.
The curb stops.
Curb stops.
And they do have parking, I think, that comes right in to where the people would wait, and there is no curb. So that shows kind of that situation. This is different. We don't have parking
Right there.
Head
right
on.
there, but there is a building there. So I guess the curb stops would be all along the glass,
Correct.
but provide an opening for accessibility, obviously,
Into the,
into,
The
near the
entrance.
door. Yeah,
Correct.
at the door.
correct.
So.
That seems reasonable and important for safety.
So, and obviously Doug will,
Decide where those go.
so that they'll be placed.
Is there some kind
as-
of design element we should think about, or they're all like standard, what they look
They're
like?
very standard. They're about 5 feet long. You see them all over. Typically,
Okay.
they're painted in this area. In this instance, I would just have them, request them yellow. They could be mountable over like obviously a fire truck, because also in that that 24-foot aisle, right? You still want circulation for a fire truck, right? And so, I think right here it's a tight site, and you're just trying to manage, a couple different instances.
I think they have 27 or 28 feet, but like you said, to include the stop and the 24 feet, there's not a lot of wiggle room there, but there's,
Do we need to put them around the bike racks in some way? I see that
that was,
design review was concerned about that.
yes, that was the other question. Since the bike racks are simply going into a parking spot, it would be good to have some of these things kind of blocking the parking spot so that a car doesn't also try to go into the parking spot, which made a lot of sense, I thought, so.
Seems reasonable. So adding bollards to both the storefront and the bike rack area.
Not ball,
The
Curb
Whatever it's called,
stops.
Curb stops,
Yeah.
excuse me. Curb stops.
All right, any other comments on that? Everyone's good? Okay. All right, so next, they made a note about painting on the pavement. That would be, I think, as per the fire department, whatever kind of striping they wanted on the pavement. They recommended white striping. I'm not sure. I assume it's either white or yellow, for safety, but I figured that would be as the fire department's purview. Not knowing much about that myself. There was just a note about site lighting. I don't know what kind of street lights or anything around the site, but the building seems to have a lot of lighting around. They seem to be adding a lot of lighting around the outside of the building.
Is that true? That's a lot of wall sconces in that building. Is it again decorative like the building across the street?
Mostly decorative. We're not trying to blind anybody while they're trying to.
No, but at the same time, understanding the amount of light that is required, that's a large site as well, to make sure you don't have, those wall sconces are not going to throw light beyond a certain point, but I'm not sure how you'd solve it until you have a photometrics of some sort, but
The lights are gonna be turned off during store hours, right? I mean, at the stores.
well,
closed.
but you also won't have so many wall sconces like that's shown on the rendering.
Say that again?
There are a lot of wall sconces shown on the rendering, light fixtures around the building.
Yeah.
All around,
That's
yeah.
not typical for a retail,
Okay.
so I'm not sure how.
Is the question if there's enough light, like in the parking lot, like or
Around
along the street?
site, yeah.
That's an interesting question.
Well, it would also say there isn't a butter, and we do have to be careful about light spillage, right?
Yeah.
Into someone else's property.
One thing we've learned is business hours are not our purview.
Right.
But I would think that the fire department or whoever's looking at the safety of traffic can think about that issue. Maybe that's more within their purview than ours, but
Yeah, and I'm also trying to remember.
unless you guys are gonna be open really late at night, I'm not concerned about it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, it's because you have that wetlands or whatever on the other side, the river side, and if it's really going to be dark and there are no really striping that's going to stand out at night, at least in winter times, you probably have no idea when you're turning around the building if there are not sufficient.
But the
Lighting.
pavement's going to change, and there's going to be a row of trees there. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't believe there's any site lighting.
No lamp no streetlights. Well, there should be something on that street.
It's at an intersection. There's
Well,
got to
it's
be something there.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there are streetlights
Yeah,
along
there are
Chestnut
some.
and Union.
They're just not in the rendering.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
there's light there. I mean, I'm trying to remember what it's like. Like, I've been to that gas station. I think there's a convenience store there. Am I making that up?
Yes.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
Seasons.
Yeah. So I've been there at night. This area is pretty well lit at night.
Yeah, I think so too.
I'm pretty confident there's stuff going on. So I think they're okay.
Fair enough.
So if we don't ask for a photometric study, can we just say that a condition on light spillage, particularly to protect, there is an abutting property?
You're concerned about I mean, that light doesn't seem substantial.
No, but I'm just saying if we don't have a condition, is there any
Yeah.
way to protect if it becomes a problem? If
Well,
we
they're
did-
not adding
We
any
can just say don't add.
side lighting.
The condition can be no additional side lighting will be added beyond the rendering. Something like that?
I think that makes sense because the site is an existing condition. If they're going to add lighting, that would
Back.
change the condition substantially, then I guess
Yeah.
you can make an argument about it. I think what's being proposed here is extremely limited to the business, so I personally don't have a problem with it.
So basically,
Okay.
we would make a condition that would say, if you're gonna add extra lights to the site itself, that's up to come back.
To the perimeter of the site.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that can be in a condition.
Because that can impact the neighbors.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm on page 3 now, talking about landscape. So this is where I talk about, they're talking about the list that Kathy's going to provide of just recommending different species. I think that's points 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so just 4 is requesting, I don't know if they're showing extra plants in the, I don't know if they're showing right now extra plants in the corner, but the renderings are showing it to be kind of filled out more than it is, so requesting just some extra plants in there to fill it out where the sign is. And, yeah, and to, if there's any appropriate tree, obviously a small tree, you know, in that area, it's pretty limited, that Kathy would be making those recommendations, but just, so we'd get that list and then just swap out the plants in that area for something more appropriate. Okay, I'll just keep going. People stop me if they have comments. Next category was safety and accessibility. They talked about putting the protection between the vehicles and the bike rack, so we already talked about that. That will have that done. They had talked a little bit about the delivery area, and if it was possible to put in a different space. I think in the end, they agreed that the delivery area is best where it is. Let's see, item 3. As noted above, bollards are not proposed to protect the building entry. Okay, that was the safety and security question again, kind of showing up in a couple locations. The next page, page 4, is massing and scale. The Design Review Committee takes no exception to the massing that's shown in the roof, materials and textures, stucco, vinyl siding, and roof metal panel. I think they had a question, is that, do you know, do they mean a standing seam roof? Is that what they're talking about? A metal roof?
It is metal roof, yeah.
Okay, and usually there's like the seam that sticks up. Is that the kind of metal roof that they're talking about?
I want to say yes, but I'm not sure.
Okay. So that might just be a clarification question with the architect, is the,
Okay.
what they're, we assume, it says standing, it says roof metal panel, which maybe isn't a typical term.
I think what they meant to say is that existing it is a metal roof, and what we're planning on doing is replacing that with
Yeah.
another metal roof.
Something similar, yeah.
Yeah, the metal roofs usually come, and I think they're either 12, I think they're 18-inch sections, and obviously they do have about a 2-inch reveal where they're riveted together.
Yeah.
Where that seam is, so it does stand up.
Yeah,
And so I think that,
We're not looking for anything special, it's just standard.
okay.
okay. We can just get the spec on that, and then that usually takes care of that.
And then the colors, I think, are as shown, because one of the things to be aware of is that if you're showing a color in the drawings, that's the color we expect it to be in the end, right? So if it's white with a brown roof, we expect it to be white with a brown roof. Okay. Some people were unclear about that, and we've gotten some crazy colors that had to be corrected over the years, right? That's right. So, they had recommended a sample palette, but we haven't asked that for Chase Bank or anybody else, so we didn't, I don't think we need that for this palette, for this project. Let's see. Item 2, I think is talking about the, oh, so item 2 is they were talking about an idea about adding, on the site facing Chestnut Street, it's the long new wall, right? It's not a tall wall, but it's a long wall. So they were talking about the idea of putting hanging planters there, like window boxes maybe that hang on the side of the building, as an effort to add more green space. To me, that seems like a difficult thing to maintain, because those things just, the smaller the container it is, the harder it is to keep water in it, and the plants tend to dry up, in my experience.
It's a retail, it's not a restaurant,
Okay, good point.
right?
Yeah.
There's aesthetics for every project type. So getting too held up with attempting to force green seems a little not excessive for this project, for sure. It's a retail store.
Right.
It's a grocery store. It's not a restaurant where you have outdoor seating to say you need planters to that's a little excessive, at least for me.
Anyone else? Okay.
I mean, I like the idea that they were thinking of, design review was thinking of making it inviting.
Mhm.
But I think it is a building, and I think some of those things would be, the applicant and the owner would say, I want to improve my property, make it look nicer, and over time, they
Okay.
might do some of those things.
No,
I agree with Deep and Kate. I think we gotta keep the request on the right proportion to the project.
okay.
I'm there as well. I don't think we need planters. I mean, to me, if the applicant has money to throw around, it's a very sunny site. It would be nice to see solar there. Nice, not required. So, to me, it's a massive improvement over what we have now. And like I said, we got a section of green space up front that's not there currently. So I like that movement. Anytime we come into a space and we make it more green, I'm satisfied. And I don't know if the building has to have greenery on it. It's a meat market. It's not I'm not even sure it's a restaurant, but like to me, when I see a lot of green on a building or near a building, I'm thinking that's more of like garden space or a farm space, farm stand, not necessarily a meat market. Now, if there's a grocery store there and there's like produce, maybe there's a theme there, but again, that's up to the owner.
Okay.
I
All
don't
right.
know if I would require anything on the wall.
All right, understood. Next question then is about the sconces that are on that side of the building. I think they're kind of all around the building. And it's just asking that those are dark sky compliant, which is kind of what we were, it's not exactly what we were talking about with site lighting, but that they're mostly the lighting's going down, not up, right?
Well, it's up and down lighting.
Yeah, it is.
At
up-
least the rendering is showing that.
Yeah.
But there is a metal roof that is literally has an overhang that's probably going to cover that light. So
So-
don't think there should be a concern on dark.
Do you, Deepa, you had made a comment earlier about the number of lights. Do you think that it could be reduced, or was that just a suggestion?
Yeah,
or?
it feels a little too much. So again, I don't know if it is trying to make a beautiful rendering or is it calculated, because typically you won't have so many around a retail environment, and you don't have too much height as well. So if it's aesthetics, trying to make a beautiful rendering, I think that's targeted. I'd be very surprised you'll be landing up wiring so many lights concerts on the exterior of the building, so.
I agree. You're asking us to do that.
Yeah, so I think it's
Well-
a matter of providing lighting around the
Yeah.
building.
Yeah, sufficient lighting, because you have parking on all sides and have
Yeah.
people walking up to the store, at least to the front. So the lighting should be sufficient for that purpose, but it also should be calculated to make sure you're not throwing money into something that's not going to be functional, right?
Yeah, so I counted just thinking about it, I've counted 6 sconces on the rear of the building, right? Now, if those 6 sconces are, and correct me if I'm wrong, Deepa, if those are 10 feet on center, that means you're gonna have a 60-foot wide building, right? Indoor, coming in 10 from the sides, and then kind of starting it. I think what we have to find out is, on average, right, or just by rule of thumb, and I don't know the answer, is for the sconces that you're gonna propose, how far away from each other are they?
Yeah.
What's the standard practice?
What is the light levels that they're going to throw out? What is that? So I'm not sure how you're planning to take it to the next level in actual construction, but something to think about.
I mean, there's a point there. If they're all over the place, it's gonna be a little strange.
Yeah, but you want to make sure you're taking care of the safety aspect, because you do have parking, unfortunately, on all
Behind you.
4 sides. So you want to be careful and mindful of safety for people, at least at the back of the building, right? So designing it with that care in mind, as long as that's taken care of, should be fine.
Okay, and we can note that in the conditions as well,
Yeah.
about the lighting. Okay, going on to page 5. It's just talking about signage, so, I know they didn't look at signage. It wasn't a big part of their discussion, for the design review committee. But signage, there's a whole separate bylaw on signage that the sign has to meet. So, and they have noted it, and we can note it. And Doug will be looking at that in the construction document. So just something to be aware of when you submit the construction documents, that there's a whole bylaw on signage that needs to, for the sign that's on the street. Any other questions about signage? Nope.
Oh.
What's the cow in the picture?
So,
Oh.
essentially, there were talks about perhaps adding quote unquote a mascot, which would be literally a cow.
Okay.
But that is way beyond future planning, not something that would be initial.
I think it's called a Texas Longhorn.
Yeah, that's right.
So the only thing I was gonna say is if you're gonna be changing your plantings to something that is not Texas related, that cow will look very strange in a bunch of New England shrubs.
No, they were just talks, but
Okay.
they certainly put some.
I'm not sure who else spotted it, but
That's impressive.
you spotted it.
On purpose to see if.
If
So you
anybody,
would find the cow. Yeah. and
wow, I missed the cow.
Well, yeah, and I don't
It's
know,
like, where's Waldo?
you know, I believe, unless it was back a little bit, right? I think in this picture, the cow would be on town property.
So, I mean, just to be clear, I mean, it's kind of funny, but I think we have to say a condition, the cow's not allowed until they come back to the board, because it's, if we're accepting these renderings as.
No, I agree. I think they're okay with no cow.
Kate, I'm gonna let you write that decision.
I would be okay with a live cow if the milk is sold and not
In
pasteurized.
the store, right.
Yes.
You can write that condition.
I'll write that condition.
If there is a live cow. All right. All right, open space.
It might
Oh,
help with the floodplain.
So there's nothing there. Open space is just talking about conservation. Site signage obviously just refers to the signage again.
So
then-
sorry,
Yep.
is this a highway commercial zone?
I believe so.
think it is.
I-
Highway commerce, yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, this is highway commerce.
Okay.
Yeah, and then it talked about rotating the bike rack. I think in a lot of the drawings, I think we talked about this last time, that the bike rack is shown as really a big bike rack for this location. So it seems like certainly 8 feet of bike rack in one parking space is going to be plenty.
Yep.
And yeah, I'm not saying you need 8 feet of bike rack. I'm just saying that I don't see tons of
I'm
people
just
coming
imagining
up
the
with
cow protecting the bike rack. Sorry.
this. We're getting loopy on it. It's early.
It's been a long day.
Yeah. Okay, so, so talking about a wheel stop at the bike racks, we already talked about that being a good idea. Yeah, and again, it just is talking about the protective curbs, so I think that's,
So
I
are
think
they
that's the-
suggesting to rotate the bike rack?
I think right now, like,
It is padded to the parking,
yeah, I think we had it,
padded to 19 feet
yeah.
deep.
So they were talking about turning it, putting it deeper into the parking space, and then with the little,
Accessible from the front versus,
well, accessible from the back too, but having the blocks in front, so there's more space between the bike racks and where the cars would,
yeah,
yeah. so
that
just,
makes sense.
Again, a little bit more safety.
Sure.
So, all right, so those are the.
So
those
my notes
the-
are basically curb protection, plantings, and the conditions of lights and cow.
I think that's pretty good, and a question about the metal roof. But I think this is something, Peter, we can type up. so
I can
it's
type it
clear.
up, and Alan and I, and obviously Alan and I and the applicant can work through these issues, and, I think, if appropriate to the board, I'll start, drafting up conditions in a site plan approval document, and we can kind of get those ready for the next meeting.
Is that good with everybody? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Then in that case, we will be looking, do you have any comments for us?
Come back for the cow.
All right, in that case, we will be continuing this until.
May 23rd.
May 23rd.
I will make a motion to continue 6 Chestnut Street site plan approval application to May 23rd.
Second that.
And a roll call vote,
Deepa Venkatai.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcelo Arjona, aye.
Catherine Jersey.
and Tricia Kendall, aye. So, yeah, so I think that's a lot of progress, and we're getting very close. All right, thank you.
You got to stick around.
All right,
We're really entertaining tonight, so.
all right,
Thank you, and
Thank
we'll touch
you.
base, but just, you talk to Terry and your architect, and we can just answer those questions, and we'll move forward. Cool.
good.
All right, have a great weekend.
All right, next on our agenda is 151 Main Street. This is the tap room at the old firehouse. Peter,
Yes.
where are we with this
So,
thing?
we have some new renderings in front of everybody, and we have some site plans. So, they're scattered around the table. I think everyone should have a full set. However, so 151 Main Street, so they did send us back in a revised accessible parking spot, which was the big, one of the big elements that we were asking for.
Decent construction related, right?
And then there are some construction-related documents that have been updated. On the call tonight, we have John Muldoon and Alan Waite? He is here tonight, and he can kind of walk through the updates from this. Please do note that one of the elements that I did request from receiving this document was just a cross-section, and it's just a minor detail in the element, so hopefully we can kind of get that. But tonight, obviously, we have John and Alan, and I will let them speak and give us an update on the project as a whole, and kind of go from there. So I am making John and Alan co-hosts, so you can now unmute yourselves. And Alan and John, please take it away and update the board with any updates that you do have.
Sure. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, good. I stole my wife's Apple earbuds, and I've never used them before, so I was nervous. Thank you for your patience over the last 8 weeks. We filled you in the backstory with the architect leaving the company and the setbacks that caused for what is a relatively simple revision. So what we did was on the right-hand side, we moved the door to better accommodate a handicap parking spot with both access to on both sides of a car that would theoretically be parked there. So they'll be able to get in and out on both the left or right side with 5 feet of clearance on both ends and not impact what is going to be the beer garden area. And in addition to that, there's some previous questions on the about the rendering for the front patio and what that was going to look like. And we kind of talked through that before, and we reflected it in the revision that we're going with poured concrete, which will match the existing foundation. The size of that is going to be 44 feet long and about 24 inches high, so 2 feet high, and it's going to be set back 15 feet from the building. The 15-foot setback is reflected in page 7 of the architectural drawings. And what am I missing there? The depth of that, the wall itself is going to be 8 inches, so a very standard retaining wall that we're then backfilling, and that is not going to be a seating area. Mentioned before that we're putting relatively low profile black planter boxes across the front of it, and it's really more designed to just keep being able to open the garage doors, let some air in an inside-outside feel without worrying about kids mainly, running into the road. So we're going to put games out there, cornhole, ladder golf, things like that, more than seating. So that's more. It's not the most profitable space because there's no seats, but from a design perspective and a functionality perspective, we really liked it. So we went with it. And I don't think there was anything else on the revisions that we did. It was relatively minor, which made the 8 weeks tough.
Yeah, I think I think the three things maybe for me are, and I know we already talked about the dumpster and we went through that last time, but in the end, we need to make sure you have a site plan that's submitted with your package that shows the dumpster in back. Like I said, I know it's going to be provided, it's working with the town for it, but we always just need a site plan to show where it is. And I don't think it's on this set of drawings, right?
It's not on this side of drawings,
I mean,
but
it just needs to be something we can include with the package.
Yep.
Right? It doesn't have to be a formal site plan. We just need to know where that thing is. Because we'll be talking about it in the decision.
Okay.
And the other thing, which Peter had started to talk about, was that little, do you guys remember when we did the outdoor seating area for TJ's? There was just the little detail that showed what the patio looked like. And so what we're looking for, I think what the design review committee talked about and what we talked about, is just to have this really simple detail, understanding the patio on the building side, and then it hits this concrete curb. It goes up, I think you said about 8 inches, and then it goes down, but it doesn't go down very far.
So it can just be, I'm writing this down and I want to be clear on it. Are you talking about the front side or on the seating side?
The front
parking lot
side, so in between the thing that's blocking the kids from, kind of going through.
Yep.
So did you show them my example? No.
yes, I did. I sent John and Alan the example. I believe I sent Alan the example. It's really just a cross section that shows, if you cut 90 degrees, obviously, through that patio, how tall that wall would be and what's it going to look like. And with the planters, I think from the rendering standpoint, you show a planter box that's 40 feet 44 feet long. And so the
Yeah.
question is, on the construction drawings, you know, the planter boxes are boxes and they're spaced, you know, maybe they look like they're 4 feet long and they're, you know, 2 feet apart from each other. And so I think the question is just what should we expect out there?
Yeah.
Because the drawings, the architectural drawings and the renderings are not speaking to each other.
Yeah, but both can be valid solution, but which one are you actually building, right? Because they don't match. And the other thing that I'm on this new plan is that, so on the rendering, you're just showing two big glass doors, wood doors. They look very nice. But on the plan, it's two doors plus two side lights. So it's like, you know, which one are you building? Like which one is right? And so I don't know. I mean,
I didn't catch that on the side. You're talking about the lighting on the side of it?
I'm talking about the door from the handicap parking space going inside, your side door. So the
Has a light
rendering,
in the plan.
yeah, so the rendering doesn't match the plan. And I assume the plan is correct. I mean, I guess as an architect, I'm always going to assume the plan is correct versus the pretty picture. But I don't know that that's true. And we just want it to be, we're just looking for, so that we know what's being built, right? And there's not, right
Sure.
now, there's two ideas here. So.
Okay, we'll take it back and we'll revise it, and yeah.
But, yeah, so it's similar actually to the last project. It's just that we need, if we're going to be taking a vote on a package, we need to make sure the package is clear, and that's really that all that it's about. So, does anyone else have any
Sure.
comments?
I definitely agree with it, Tricia. We need a little more detail about this patio seating. But with the way this is rendered, with how it's marked up on that A102B, that door is opening into a sidewalk. So if I'm walking from page north towards this door, I don't have room to get into that door until I really squeeze myself through that outdoor patio space. And I don't think that's the typical way of doing it. Your door cannot protrude into a circulation space more than 7 inches. So this door is almost 3 foot into that walkway. I'm not sure how accessible that entry is, if that's your main entry into the building.
I'm not sure. I was kind of looking at it earlier. So the sidewalk is 5 foot. The sidewalk is 5 feet.
Yep. The door is it can be hold open in summers, but cannot be in winters. So that door is going to, until it's opening 180 degrees, which is not how this is drawn. Like, I don't have way of getting into this drawer until I step out into that and then walk back in here.
But you're talking about if the door is held open.
Correct.
Is that, I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I know which door,
You're talking about this
that
door.
one. Okay, got it.
That you're talking about the side door,
Yeah, where
on
you have
by
the
patio?
outdoor patio.
So we're looking at sheet A102B, right? Yes.
It's a double door coming in from the accessible parking spot, John?
Yeah, I guess I don't understand that, because to me that looks accessible. You get the 5 foot wide clearance there on the patio, on the sidewalk there, and then you know, I don't know how else you would. I guess I don't understand what you're saying.
Is
with
that
being
the
able to
main
get into
flow for folks to come in? Is using that 5 foot strip the way people would come in addition to your accessible folks?
Is that the only
Yeah, I
main-
mean, there's two points of entry. You know, how people choose to get in there. I mean, there's a sidewalk, which is certainly one way. They may not choose to do that and just walk behind the cars like a lot of parking lots and directly into the door. But the door is a double door, so you can lock one side of it and then the other side is accessible to the right by virtue of that being locked.
Is that held open, or is that door closed in the sense? I guess it's
I
not.
think the door is
it's
typically closed.
yeah.
Right, so I think, I'm not sure, for one thing, I'm not sure,
Usually
Like-
it's set in. It's never set into a circulation path like that, but
I,
So are
I-
you saying it should be opening into the inside of the building?
it should be set, the door should be set in so that this path is
Yep, it's
clear.
open. The big path.
Um,
Yeah.
Right now, that's not how it is.
I mean, now that I understand what you're saying, I think I understand what you're saying. My
mean, if you-
non-architectural translation of what you're saying
no.
is that essentially the invitation to go into the building is only this way, coming in.
Well, that's a parking
You can't really
spot.
go the other way.
Yeah,
But that's
No.
a parking
I mean-
spot.
yeah,
That's kind of weird. So
What's a
how do you-
parking spot here? Right.
yeah, that's an accessible
But this is
spot.
open, no?
That's
That's
open.
not,
That's open.
That's open.
that's open.
Yeah, so I think actually we have to look at, or have to
Going
have
that
Doug
way.
Scott look at it, because I mean,
Yeah.
parking lots obviously are not my specialty, but I did go back and look at the regulations, and I thought it was okay. I think the drawing is a little deceptive, because typically that's a 3-foot door, and it's going more than 3 feet into a 5-foot sidewalk, I think. It looks a little strange.
Looks like a really open door.
Yeah, so, so I think we need to look at that. I know there are certain circumstances, like Deepa said, that it can only protrude a certain amount into a space. But I'm not sure if that's like an egress corridor, which this would not be. So it's just something, I mean,
Sounds like we need Doug to look at it. Who's Doug?
Doug's our building
building
commissioner.
the building commissioner.
So
Yeah, so it's just, we just want to make sure it's,
I think
it just has to be to code. And so
Yeah.
it's just making sure that it is. Maybe Doug can take a look at it and say yes or no.
Doug looked at this already, and obviously,
Okay.
in this, I don't know if this, but I'm gonna point out I'm gonna point out this matter to him, and then I'll get a specific answer back, and then obviously
Doug-
John.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
Sorry,
it's all right.
Doug raised that as an issue before, and he's had the rendering since last Tuesday and hasn't brought it up as an issue, which doesn't mean that it's not, but he raised the problem with the door previously. But it was more around the sidewalk being 5 feet wide. And then the door, he had the solution for it, which I'm assuming the architect did, because Doug, when he got the rendering, didn't bring it back up.
Okay, you know what? I'm gonna draft an email tomorrow, and I'll send it to you, Jamie and Alan, and I'll obviously have Doug CC'd on it, and then that's something also you can forward to your architect. And if your architect wants to provide or point out the code that he used to design the door, I think we can have this discussion within the next 2 weeks, so we can kind of get an answer for everybody on it, because I'm not. This isn't my specialty, and I think it's outside of the realm of, but I think it's definitely for safety matters. I think we definitely just need to get clarification on it.
Yeah, agreed. It's very, like I said, it's not in my realm either. It's very detailed looking at AD. I won't say that I'm an expert on it.
Trust me, I'm doing this from the 8 to 5 last 2 months.
Okay, so Deepa,
So
if
that's
Deepa's
why
spotting
it
some,
caught my attention.
if Deepa's
So-
spotting something, she may be the voice of the most experience here, so.
You
so-
also need an ADA ramp at that location, so that from your sidewalk, I don't know what height that,
I think it's
sidewalk.
flush,
is
right?
it flush?
I mean, is that
I
a
don't
raised
know.
sidewalk? I don't,
know.
The sidewalk is raised, but the
It
access
is,
to the
okay.
door, I mean, it has to be flush. I mean, so we're not gonna do, it has to be flush, so there's no real option there, so, you mean from the point of entry in there? So we didn't reflect that in the drawings, because I'm not.
So when you do that, if a wheelchair has to get out of that car and get into that door, you need that
Yep.
ADA ramp to get to the door.
Yeah, right, yep.
So when you do that, your dimensions are going to fight a little bit, so something to check into.
Yeah, we'll have to grade it out and make sure that it's
Yeah.
accessible. 100%. Yeah. I mean, we just won't be able to open if it's not.
But you're also, I think to Deepa's point, you're adding a ramp.
Yeah,
And
it's
therefore-
when you say ramp, it's
Yeah.
like literally a curb that
Yeah.
slopes in three directions because you have traffic moving around, so.
Yeah, so they have a note there that says provide curb
I
cut,
think-
which may be what they
I think
need,
that
but
actually-
not really the right
sorry.
term. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think it already exists too. If I might be misremembering it, but it was an existing handicap spot there, and there is access to the front of the building now. So I think it's just a matter of working with the existing access and neatening that out a little bit, because that is a handicap spot now.
I can confirm that. I've walked down there too many times. And then also there's a ramp in the front of the building, as well.
Okay, do you have, is there any other questions on this project? It's just kind of those little clarifications, really.
I was trying to recollect this front elevation in addition to the raised area seems to have gotten tweaked a little bit. Or is it just my imagination? I didn't remember that awning before seeing that. Has there been an update to the front elevation?
Don't think so. Have there been any changes to the front elevation besides the wall? Yeah.
I mean, we're gonna backfill it, which is the point of the wall, to level it out to the existing grade of where the doors open.
No, I mean on the rendering of what it looks like on the front.
No, we didn't really change that.
Okay.
I mean, we
The
changed it
awning
just to
is
make it.
existing, it's just paint.
Yeah.
Maybe the flags were missing. Something feels like elements added here, but maybe just my imagination.
We haven't looked at it for a while, probably.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
So any other questions on this that?
I mean, no particular questions. I did note I read the letter from the applicant to Peter of April 25th. It seems like the applicant has had some bad luck and kind of slowed down in the process. And so it seems like we have some good energy behind this project. Are there, I guess, challenges that the applicant is experiencing that we as a planning board should be aware of that we can, is there anything that we need to do to assist in the movement of this?
No, just the clarity around what you guys want on this meeting is great. And the same thing for, I'm going to go back to Doug too and ask him just to make sure that we're good on everything so we can go back one more time and make sure that we get it right. And I think we have that. And I'm going to follow up with an email just to make sure that we have everything right before we take it back and fix it next week.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say that list is, and jump in, people, if I got this wrong, is the making sure the handicap accessibility is shown correctly, the making sure that that exact same door is shown correctly between the rendering, and the,
Was it the lights on the door? Was that what?
no, the door, on the drawing, the door, it shows two doors, and beside each door is a window, like a side light.
Oh, yeah,
But on,
yeah.
But on the rendering, it's
Yeah.
just two glass doors, which is great. I don't need the side lights, but I'm just wondering, are you making
one is it?
a big opening, or are you making a smaller opening when you go to make your
Yeah,
opening?
that was 100% me who learned how to Photoshop after I got some bad renderings and
Okay.
I got Adobe. Artificial intelligence is wonderful, and I put the door in, and the wood door, and I frankly I really like it. So that is a change from what now it's a matter of making sure that it's sized up right and we can get it.
So you are
So
thinking.
I'm with you there.
So you are thinking there's going to be side lights.
That was the initial intent.
Okay.
And now it's like, okay, can we find a door that matches that wonderful brown door, which I really, really enjoy,
Okay.
with the side lights?
Okay, and then
Jamie, when you tried to Photoshop that, you forgot that the lintel got cut in between. At the one edge is not complete. So Photoshop to do's and don'ts.
yeah, and then the third thing is just that detail through the curb and the planters. So it's nothing,
And do you need that patio, outdoor seating, entry, exit layouts? The patio, outdoor seating does not, I don't,
no, the outdoor seating is just going to be movable seating on the side of the building. There's no seating on the front of the building.
yeah, for this layout, don't you need a layout?
I don't think we need a layout. I think
Are they just movable?
I think that on the outside, it's
Divide
just
them?
movable tables, seasonal and, right, and in the winter, in the winter, it's parking. So in the winter, it just goes back to a parking lot. In the summer, they're going to use it as seating. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. So,
Nice memory.
so. Okay, so I think it's just those three things, but we'll make sure that we have a list of the three.
Yeah,
things.
no, we'll follow up with a list and we'll
Okay.
be in contact. And for this project, I already do have a decision drafted. And so I can circulate that decision. We can start taking a look at it. And then I'll work to collect all the remaining information with Jamie and, John. So I'm reading off the screen. John and Alan.
Yeah, so, and that decision is one that I know I have already went through based on comments that we've talked about with the board from the beginning in this project, and we can send it out, and it's just the basic,
Sounds good.
one list of basic criteria, not the 4 lists that we've had to go through before.
Okay.
So, okay, so again, almost there, just the little details, so.
So I'll make a motion, unless there's more, should I make a motion to continue?
Are there any other questions from the applicant?
No, but thank you for asking.
Okay, thank you.
I'll make a motion to continue 151 Main Street site plan approval application to May 23rd.
23rd.
Second that.
And a roll call vote?
Deepa Venkatai.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcelo Hona, aye.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
And Tricia Kendall, aye. So we will see you on the 23rd.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, so. Next on our agenda, 13 Joanne Drive. I believe this is continuing, but I'll hand that to you, Peter.
Correct. So 13 Joanne Drive, just for everyone's information, is a project where they're proposing to put 2 solar canopies over the existing parking area. And what I can tell you is that we've met with them. We had a tech review meeting this week, and there was a question that came up regarding the easement, and it was a water and sewer easement. And so I did not have the clarification on that from the applicant, and then also from the water and sewer department. So with that said, I verbally spoke with the applicant yesterday, and late yesterday, after pulling the easement from the registry of deeds, taking a look at it, trying to figure out kind of where this kind of came from, because it's something that didn't come up into conversation until late in the process. And so with that said, the applicant and I both felt it was best to continue this project to the next planning board meeting. And then that would allow me 2 weeks to take the application and look at it a little bit further with the water and sewer department regarding the water and sewer easement that runs through the property. It may be the fact that the easement that was marked on the plan, that the solar canopy is going to be erected over, is a private easement. And so therefore, it is not a town sewer easement, so it would be kind of a moot point. But not knowing that yesterday, then into today, and not having the time to meet with the water and sewer department, the applicant verbally requested a continuance until May 23rd. I did follow up with an email yesterday. I have not got a response. However, I will put that in writing tomorrow and file a continuance with the town clerk. So I have the plans here, and I can hand them to everybody for everyone to take a look at. However, at this point, the applicant and myself felt like it was the best move was to kind of press pause, get the right answers regarding the easement, and then come back at the 23rd and propose with the applicant's engineer and do a full presentation.
Any questions? Might be a good idea if people aren't familiar with that complex to just take a drive through there. Just so we're all, you know, I don't think there's a need for an official site walk or anything like that, but it's not like Dairy Queen where we've all been, you know, it's a site that maybe not all of us have been to.
And just to note to the planning board, there's a new ownership group. A new ownership group took ownership of that property about 2 to 3 years ago. There's a new management company there, and so part of their effort is to to make investments in this property. They are completing a project to put solar on the roofs, and so they're just doing that right now. They do want to put solar in the parking lot, which is going to be proposed at the next meeting. They are fixing up and making some improvements to the pool area. And then the other thing they're doing is they're trying to upgrade some of the mechanicals in throughout the facility. And so it's been a fluid conversation with the new applicants, with the new owners, with the new management company. And so this is just a step in the process for the new ownership company to make some investments within that property. So we know solar is a big thing that we always talk about, and so after finishing the job or the project to add rooftop solar, this is the next step regarding solar on that property.
All right, so we're looking to continue this, I guess, until the 23rd as well, right?
That is correct.
I'll make a motion to continue 13 Joanna Drive site plan approval application to May 23rd.
Second that.
On a roll call vote?
Deepa Venkatai.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcelo Arjona, aye.
Catherine Jersey.
And Tricia Kendall, aye. All right, continued to the 23rd. And now, our big item of the night, 1060 Main Street discussion. So, Anna, do you want to run with this one? I missed the second half of the meeting before, though I think I filled out my fair share.
Anna, before you jump in, I just want to.
I'm not prepared to run with it, but I can co-run with it.
Okay,
Yeah,
I was gonna
that's
set the table,
Okay,
right?
Yeah,
As I would like to say, set the
that's
table.
fine, that's good.
Yeah.
And Amanda, I'm gonna send you some renderings. I sent it to Marcelo. I didn't understand you were gonna be via Zoom tonight, but I'll take care of this in a second. So with that said, I did collect all documents and I did send it out kind of late today, but I prepared it. It's all in one Word document and it's in front of everybody. And Amanda and Marcelo, you guys did receive this. Just regarding the addendums, we did make a map of the downtown. Alvaro did put this together, and so that was a element. Now, there's a couple things here that I just kind of want to show everybody. So this rendering was a rendering that was spoken about at the last planning board meeting that we liked. It was really positively received during the planning board public hearing. So that was, the conceptual Main Street streetscape of the Ashland Mills, and this is dated March 7th, 2023. This is part of the document that I did add in. Then the second element I did bring in was the site plan concept, Ashland Mills, and this is dated February 17th, 2023. So this one that I have up here on the 8.5 and 11 predates the hand-drawn sketch by about a month and a half. But both elements, I think, were received from the planning board, and obviously both of them do have that project lining up with Pleasant Street.
Great.
And so then, furthermore, I did add in the Myrtle Street view of a project right here.
For the current project?
Nope,
Yeah.
this
No,
is
for the
all,
old.
this is all the project
Yeah.
that was in front of the planning board.
Yep.
So this this is just a project that I added in, and obviously renderings.
That's old.
This is old.
That's old.
Okay.
Yeah, it's bad.
Not that one.
Bad,
Okay,
bad.
so this one's
So,
out.
yeah, no,
Okay. And
bad.
then the other element that I did print, that I don't have a copy of,
Yeah.
is there is a rendering, I think Deepa, nope, you're not picking it up. It's the one Kate has. Kate, it is about the walkway in the back at one point in time, there was a proposed river walk. And so
That we were excited about.
that everyone was excited about.
Yeah,
And
where is
so
that? We have a picture of that?
It is in, I did print out 3 copies of each.
Maybe,
For the river walk,
is it
Is it
part
this
of,
thing?
it might be part of that, yeah.
This
it's the-
thing,
it's the
right
one on
there. Okay,
yep, it's that one.
Okay,
so
so
it's
not
all of
this,
this stuff,
Correct.
but not this piece.
yeah, this is the
Okay.
old piece.
That's the old piece. So
Yeah.
that piece is not gonna be added in.
Yeah.
But the river walk, which you have in your hand,
Right, maybe.
that was, I
Yeah.
thought,
Yeah.
one of the documents that we did speak of, that we did mention. I know, obviously, looking at this, document, the river played a big role, obviously, in some of our comments. And so I did just want to bring that to the table as a document and a rendering that we were in review of. And so, at this point, I did collect everything. That letter, I did not try to format it.
Yeah, you just threw it together.
I just threw it together, one compiled document, and I tried to kind of move it forward.
Okay.
And so that's where everything
mean,
kind of stands right now.
Yeah, I mean, Tricia, what I can do is I can kind of introduce us to how we got here based on the last meeting, what we had in mind, what I remember. And then I guess I can introduce my section with Amanda, the one that we worked on, and then we can talk about how we want to go through this, right?
Actually, might that, maybe,
Or
that would-
what do
maybe,
you have in mind?
no, I think actually
Yeah.
that might be a good idea, that we just go through the document.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry, Deepa, we didn't, because you weren't at the meeting, you lucky dog, you didn't get homework.
well, you might get some
I
homework
was in
tonight.
Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Can I, yeah,
Totally in a different time zone.
So yeah, so maybe we go through it, and actually it might be good to have Deepa's fresh eyes, right, on it. But maybe each of us, we can just go through it,
yes.
and when you get to your section, you can explain your section and what
Yeah.
kind of you did, so.
The one thing I was going to say is, what we used as a model for this is West Newbury, right? But we are our own community, so we get to kind of do it our own way as well. So the last meeting, the format that we came up with on, kind of for ourselves, was this little blurb that you see at the top of Peter's draft, where we thought of having a section with documents, having a big picture section, having some contextual sections, and then going right for the site. So Amanda and I worked on the document section and the big picture. Now, in drafting the document section, we as a board need to talk about what is the purpose of the document section? Is it more like a reference guide for the state? Hey, state, we paid attention to all of these things. Or is it also like an exhibit thing where certain exhibits, like for example, the documents that Peter pulled, are they just like for our reference point to reference that we review them? Or are there particular documents we want to present to the state as an exhibit? So that is up for discussion tonight, because the way Amanda and I drafted it was more like, this is our reference guide. Look, we are really well informed. We reviewed all this stuff. However, looking at some of the stuff Peter brought, we might want to think about, maybe we should present like 5 exhibits to support our documentation. For example, we could have this particular March 7th, 2023 visual, 3 stories that we all sort of were positively
Excited about?
or excited about. There was positive energy around. And maybe we can have one just like this to represent the current project, that some are defining as 5 stories, some are defining it as 5 + 1 = 6 stories, which would look very, very different, right? So I'm just kind of throwing it out there that we as a board need to decide, like, do we need exhibits or not? Is there a benefit to that or not? Because right now, these are just reference documents. So that's kind of one thing to think about. I don't know if we want to talk about that at the end.
Yeah, I think maybe we go through
Yeah.
it and.
Yep,
and- Yeah,
absolutely.
because there might be places
Yeah.
where this makes more sense
Sure.
once we get a general
Yeah,
understanding.
and obviously the reference documents that Amanda and I chose were some of the ones that we had discussed at the last meeting, and then those that we referenced in our big picture analysis. So we started with section, basically the introduction section that we literally copied out of the West Newbury section. That's how they start their memo, that they're in receipt of the application and that they're now submitting comment, right? And to be honest with you, I have not double-checked that their citation but I'm confident it has not changed in 4 years. So I will double check that. The lawyers did not double check that citation. Then as far as documents are concerned, we had talked about the fact that, hey, we're referencing the detailed map of Ashland, the photos of the building right now, the photos of the river and the bridge right now. Then we have our zoning bylaw from 2021. That's the one that I think Tricia's section references a lot. And we called it planning document. So that was intentional because if anyone has attended, was it last night? I have my nights confused. Whatever it was, the 40B meeting regarding this project, it's important to kind of understand what is our, not authority, but what is the jurisdictional ability for us to impact either the approval of a 40B project or conditions, and planning is very important. So we call these planning documents. Planning document number 1 for the town of Ashland that we reference is the zoning bylaw from a few years ago. Planning document number 2 that shows some planning elements in the town is the demolition bylaw. Planning document number 3, which is in progress, is the proposed Ashland Historic District documents that we, I think, saw a few meetings ago. We're referencing these to show the state, hey, we are aware as a board that we've been planning for downtown, and we are aware as a board that we're continuing to plan for downtown. This is important to us as a community. Then there were memos from the planning department relative to SHI, to affordability. The most relevant memo, the most recent one that I could find was March 1st, 2023. And that's the one that included the chart that you'll see later where Amanda and I talked about how great we've done and how we were in safe harbor, et cetera. So that comes right out of that memo, and any reference to safe harbor is literally cut and pasted right out of that memo. That's our key reference point to how well we've done. Then we have the current owner's original renderings, which Peter, some of them he printed, like the March 9th is the one that Peter printed for us. There was also a later one, May 5th, which we liked less. Remember how we really got excited about March 9th, but then the following meeting, they showed up with one that was slightly different, where things looked a little bit different, like the color scheme was a little off. So
I think
that
yeah.
one, there was another one that happened right after it, and then we started to compare the two, and then they started to ask for continuances. So we reference both. I call this the preferred rendering, and then the modified rendering that's related to that. Because really at the end of our process, we were looking at preferred and slightly different, and we were like comparing them. Then there is the continuance letter of March 31st, which talked about the owner's attorney had mentioned the progress we had made, the collaboration, the positive stuff that was happening, and the agreement to our vision. Not agreement, but acceptance of our vision. So that's in there. And then there was a memo, and then I added 2 potential memos that we could create for the state. Because the last memo on affordability is from March of 2023, more than a year ago, I don't know if we as a planning board would want an updated document to sort of explain what has happened after we went out of safe harbor, is that what it was called, safe harbor?
Safe harbor.
Thank you. And like what the updates are, because it's been more than a year. If we wanted to, we could add a memo on that. We could also create a memo if we wanted to on all of the money coming into downtown, like all of the infrastructure that we've improved, the Riverwalk that we've improved. Amanda and I just didn't have all those details, and we didn't have time to bug Peter about it, but it might be worthwhile for the state to kind of get a summary of like, hey, Ashland has really focused on making downtown look beautiful, right? All this money pouring in, all this effort, all of this stuff coming underground and all that. Then we had talked about using Tricia's color-coded document
Trying to ask.
that hopefully we can find.
I'm trying to find, I'm sorry.
And then there's the Chapter 40B Handbook for Zoning Boards of Appeals, which we would not print, but that is the document that I think I referenced the last meeting, and we wanted some sort of official guide, so the state knows that we're not just like making the stuff up. We're grounded in some kind of official documentation. And it looks like Peter added in yellow the March 7th one, which is actually already, I think I called it March 9th. But Peter calls it March 7th, but it's the same document.
Yep.
And the February 17th, which is just a reflection of the earlier. So anyway, so that's the document section. The idea of the document section would be all of the other sections that were written. If you guys reference documents, we should add them to that section, right? So that it's reflective of all of your stuff too. Any questions about the document section?
I think so.
Okay. And then Amanda and I worked together, and truly together. We talked, then I drafted a piece of it. She did a lot of editing, really cleaned it up, and then she really helped me finish it. So I can say this was a true team effort. So the way we started the general comment about the project is we grounded ourselves, being lawyers, in what the lawyer said at the 40B meeting, which was that if you look at other examples of projects where conditions are strong or denied applications, some of those focus on town's efforts to move towards affordability. Downtown projects tend to be sensitive. I think he mentioned a Cape Cod case that involved downtown, and also planning elements, showing that the project is contrary to the town's planning elements, which is why we refer to those planning documents as 1, 2, 3, to kind of focus the state on planning elements of what's happening in our town. Maybe the fourth planning document is the zoning that Tricia's section references. That could be planning document 4, because, well, actually it's there as number 1. Never mind, it's right there already. Anyway, so we grounded our general comment in that. Like, I don't know if you guys have had a chance to read it, or if you, like, how do you want to go about that? The general comment before we get to A.
Yeah,
I guess we could all read that general comment. It's just 2 paragraphs.
yeah, maybe it's worthwhile.
I can also read it out loud if it's easier for the public. I can read it quickly. For the last decade, the town of Ashland has demonstrated commitment as a community to adding significant housing, including affordable units to its housing inventory. Furthermore, the town has made significant investment in the revitalization and improvement of our downtown infrastructure. Through both of these efforts, the town has prioritized a development vision that embraces the small town feel and historic features of the town of Ashland. And this should say of the downtown in the town of Ashland. The focus should be on downtown in the town of Ashland, while acknowledging the critical need for creation of affordable housing. In fact, without certain unfortunate circumstances outside of the town's control, the town would already be well over the 10% threshold that would create safe harbor for purposes of 40B. In addition to these big picture considerations, this specific application is for a project that is not simply anywhere in Ashland's downtown. Rather, it's at the key entryway into downtown and was filed during a gap in the safe harbor that existed when a project at the site was before the Ashland Planning Board, and which might return should certain projects already approved by the Ashland Planning Board move forward for construction. The spirit of the 40B legislation is to increase housing where it is most needed. Ashland is not a community where this need has been ignored. In fact, we have experienced incredible recent growth, specifically in large housing developments with a large focus on affordable housing. We are not a community that is turning its back on the purpose or intent of 40B. So we wanted to ground our start at Ashland has done everything possible to develop a lot. And downtown is different. Downtown is unique. And we kind of focused on downtown right away as being different from our overarching goal for the entire community to build, which we've done really, really well. That's the heart of how we wanted to start it. we wanted the state to see from the get-go, this project is smack downtown, that's meant to be different, and Ashland has already done everything it possibly can to develop. 40B is not for us. 40B is for a community that is failing, right? We're not that community. That's kind of the way we're trying to present it. So then we moved into 3 sections, A, B, and C. We wanted to give context for the prior application so that the state has an understanding, because the current application still involves the same property owned by the same person. So we wanted to give context. That's A. We also wanted the state to understand that for the entire duration of the initial project in front of us, we were in safe harbor from the point of application to the continuance request. And we wanted the state to see safe harbor meant, these were our numbers. We were either really close to 10% at 9.1, or we were about to overcome it. And then C is Ashland has been planning for its unique downtown, right? We have planning elements for downtown. So again, what Amanda and I are doing is we're starting the argument off with those key elements that have been successful in other communities in strong conditions or denials, which are planning elements, downtown, and all the effort on affordability. We kind of wanted this to start there. So A is the prior application before the Ashland Planning Board. We call it Mr. Gordon Ashland Properties, so it's really clear who's who. Background and the history of, well, first of all, Amanda, do you want to add anything on the general comments before I go on? Is Amanda unmuted? We can't hear her. I just want to make sure I give her a chance to speak on the documents and the general comment.
I apologize, Amanda. You are now a co-host and you can unmute yourself.
Thank you. No, I think everything makes sense so far. Apologies for making you unmute me, Peter, but at least now.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It's my fault. I'm trying to look for something and I'm striking out.
Yeah, Amanda, I'm just kind of talking, so if you want to jump in at any point, I'll make sure to give you time, but if you want to, just let me know. So prior application background and the history of proposed projects at this site is key for context. I think it should say proposed project, not projects. While the current 40B application under review is made by Mr. Engler, the building is still owned by Rich Gordon, a longtime interested party familiar to the Ashland Planning Board. Mr. Gordon, Ashland Properties, submitted an application for mixed-use development. That's key, mixed use, because later Tricia talks about that.
But we're not going to read we're not going to read the whole thing though, right? So,
Okay,
I mean, we'll never get there.
okay. Do you want me to just stop and?
Well, I mean, can you summarize what A, B, and
Yeah.
B, C, and C are about?
So you can see that during the year that we worked, basically during the year that we worked with that applicant, we came up to a project that we liked, which is the March 9th or March 7th document. Then we got the May 5th document. Then we were in the middle of comparing the two. And then we got our first long continuance. That continuance, you can see the language from the attorney that was very constructive and positive that, hey, everybody's on the same page, we're moving in the right direction. After that, we got another continuance, and then the project was withdrawn, right? And I put in there that we did not know why. I don't recall ever receiving anything from the applicant to explain the withdrawal in any way. But the premise there is we had good collaborative work in the 1 year that we had, and we got to a collaborative place, and then the project goes away. Section B, we were in safe harbor during that entire time. From the point of the application of July 19th, 2022 to the date of the continuance request of May 31st, we are in safe harbor. Safe harbor ends 2 days later, post-continuance request on August 2nd, 2023. So essentially, why is that there? Because Ashland did everything right, literally. We did everything right. We were in safe harbor. We were collaborative. We were working on this project collaboratively. We were doing everything by the book. And by things outside of our control, we lost safe harbor literally within 2 days of the continuance request. And then there's a section right out of the March 2023 SHI memo that shows the state, hey, look how great we were doing, right? Then we move to Ashland has been planning for its unique downtown. We list off of all the historic buildings that when you enter downtown Ashland coming south from Route 9 and the Pike, which are the key Metro West regional highways, you go by the mill buildings from the 1800s, and essentially you're entering our founding era. This should say that we were incorporated actually in 1846, and there's all these buildings from the 1800s, the mill buildings being that first introduction into this mill 1800 downtown that we are actively trying to protect and honor that history that has curb appeal and charm and the aesthetics of Ashland. And then it goes on to the fact that this particular project is contrary to those planning elements that Ashland has undertaken. And we have large housing complexes everywhere else in Ashland. That's where they belong. We've done a really good job doing that. We have zoned for it in other areas of town. We did an incredible job zoning for it at 126. We zoned for it at Avenue of the Americas. Basically, our town has done everything right. 40B is not for us. That's the premise of this section. Amanda, have I missed anything?
No, I mean, I think Anna and I both heard both the attorney and then also the developer on Monday night. Or Tuesday night. I'm losing track of my days of the week. I think it was Tuesday. And I think the note about Barnstable and the developer's note about, I think he noted later in the evening that, Eastern Massachusetts is a little bit different. And I think Anna and I just wanted to emphasize that, if there are successful conditions or denials on planning bases, which I think we have every, bit of evidence, like all of our planning efforts in this area. I think we just really wanted to provide the context of it's not to the exclusion of creating affordable housing. And, it's not that 40B is not for us. It's that we could be back in safe harbor, if any sort of random situation resolves that are through no control of the planning board of a town. It's not the planning board shooting down projects. These things are approved. We could be back in safe harbor and we could have this permanent, very prominent project that is really contrary to what we've worked really hard for our downtown for forever. And I think we really wanted to call that out at the beginning to say this is, there are very unique circumstances about this site and the history of this site and this project, and also contextually what else is happening in the town in terms of our efforts to be at that required threshold.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, oh, sorry. I think that's the, that's the description. I think that's really critical to make, that we're at this point of having to deal with this project almost because of a fluke, right? Things that went into, things that didn't go into construction, things that went into litigation, things beyond our power to control. And so I think that's an important part to try to make really clear. I think it might take a little bit for that. It becomes more clear with your verbal explanation than in the text, I think. I think it's there, but it's definitely there, but how do we get it out to that level of clarity? I think the other thing I was going to say is that you had talked a little bit about the documents, and I think it's a means to, and I don't think I already did this, but actually reference, see document so-and-so, see document so-and-so, that you're putting them back into that list of documents. If you don't believe me, here's the proof, go back and look at it. So that you're referencing, everything that's on the list gets referenced somewhere in the text. And like I said, maybe it's not necessarily in your text, but it could be somewhere in this big document.
Yeah, we kind of did that with the memo, with the SHI memo, the table has C memo, right? Or we did it with the continuance so that the language of the attorneys right there, like, you know,
Yeah.
we were
because-
collaborative and doing everything by the book, basically.
Yeah, because I think this is, because that's what was so frustrating, and I've talked to Peter about it a number of times. It's like we worked so hard. We worked so hard on these projects. And it was just really frustrating, obviously, for all of us.
I have to say, just to vent out, when we wrote this, I felt a lot of relief because I feel like it did capture all of our hard work and Ashland's hard work. And I feel like there's a lot of misconception out there in the public that somehow the Ashland board fucked this up. Excuse my language. I did use the F word in public. And feel free to beat me. But there's misconception. There's news articles that we had this for multiple years and somehow we weren't cooperative. And we literally had this for 1 year. We did everything by the book to the point that the continuance said so. And we literally had this project during Safe Harbor with it ending 2 days after the continuance. It's a very unusual circumstance, and I felt like this document did a really good job capturing all of our hard work, including Ashland's very, very hard work in pushing for affordability. And I really think that this could even be used to ask the state for further safe harbor in some fashion. I'm not a lawyer familiar with this area, but it seemed to me like this could be utilized as an argument to say to the state, hold on, we are literally just away from safe harbor because of Pond Street, Chestnut, and our Bella litigation. Like, what is going on with those things, and why can't we push the state for some extension of safe harbor? I'm just kind of throwing that out there.
So, also what I was going to say as we go through, and obviously this is a very obvious statement that we'll have to go through, and that we talked about before, making this like into one document. Because like I already see, like for instance, okay, mine's next, section 3, context, right? And this is where I was writing about the zoning, basically mostly about the zoning that kind of got tweaked in 2020, 2021 in there. So that first section, like I'm reiterating about the different housing, right? So that material, if it's already not present above, you know, can be used and filtered upward and taken out of that context. But for my writing solo, like I needed it in there to reflect on, right? And then the next part
And
of.
if I could, I actually thought your section was different and helpful. Like, you could also have some repetition as long as it's contextually relevant to your piece, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I just think we,
So-
the more compact, I think we can make, the more non-repetitive, I should say, that we can make it, I think the better. Like, it'd be better for me to refer, it'd be better for this section to refer to the chart
Yep.
that has
Yep.
a number on it than to repeat the information, right, or something like that. And then I really, you know, start to talk about, I go right into talking about the bylaws, because that's what the section is about. So, first, it's just to introduce it's bylaw 8.5 about what was intended in forming the downtown zoning district. Not all of it is about the changes, because this district came before, obviously, the district came before we changed the district. But just to describe what that was about, what we intended for the downtown, that we have a very strong vision for the downtown. And that's really what the first section is about. But then really starting to break down all the different bylaws. I kind of went through them number by number, except at the end where they weren't, you know, it just wasn't stuff to comment about. It was about signage or, you know, something like that. It wasn't really about the zoning. So it kind of goes just through those one by one when they talk about, you know, like in the first section, they were talking about, you know, what the purpose of the bylaw is, and that we provided a map. You know, it's about the historic architecture, cultural offerings, you know, things that the district was meant to do, right? And then I try to tie that into a little bit about the real project. So I'm kind of describing the bylaw, tying it into, you know, what we're doing now. 8.5.4 is about mixed use, allowing mixed use development in the area. And so again, it's about explaining what the bylaw is trying to do, and then talk a little bit about it in real life. And so we don't need to go through all of these, just because that's just the pattern all the way through.
Can I
Just
ask
trying
you-
to deal with the zoning.
Can I ask you one question? I thought that was an excellent
Yep.
section. I noticed you kind of went in chronological order of the bylaw, almost like we're writing a decision where we're analyzing, hey, these are the factors we have to look at. So I really liked it for my linear brain. I do wonder, like, I started to make notes, like, for example, that first paragraph where you talk about, I guess it's not the first paragraph, sorry, third paragraph, where you talk about, the heart of that that particular third paragraph is the commercial base of the zoning. So like I made like a little note relative to like a grade for the project, that's a minus for this project because it's not commercial enough. The next paragraph you had, it was really about like the lack of development on the first floor. So for me, that was like a negative to the grade of the project. The third one was more positive for the project. So like each one is either positive or negative relative to the project. And my only thought was, because we're presenting it to the state, maybe rather than doing it like in linear order, we say to the state, hey, these are all the negative points of how this project does not meet our intent of our zoning and our planning. Yes, there's a few positive elements, but it's overwhelmingly negative. And listing them more like in headings of like all the negative factors, very limited positive factors, so that the state can see if you're looking and comparing them, they're kind of totally outweighing anything positive, versus this way, where I'm afraid the state will lose sight of there's a lot of negative here and very little positive.
I think that's a good point. I could do it that way, but with the caveat that I would not, like, my goal was to in doing it, I was trying not to cherry pick, bylaws. I was trying to show every single one, and like, it's so being very kind of
Neutral.
honest about
Yeah.
it, right? And if I'm doing that, I think it would be really, it'd be really, we would have to let go of that notion of
Yeah,
it.
or
that-
maybe we could add like a concluding paragraph that summarizes it, like, in light of all these stuff, here's the conclusion. Like, overwhelmingly, there's more negative than positive.
Or like-
Maybe, something like that.
Like the bylaw, the portions of the bylaw not shown here aren't really relevant. I'm gonna say they're not gonna be relevant to the project, but like I said, there's some that, I would say that's the only caveat, because that's the reason
Yeah.
I went and made sure, like,
To
basically
give each
every
one.
number was
So,
included.
on the other hand, I think that you could take some and maybe some chart, but this goes along with the planning element. There's a
Yeah.
lot of planning there.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
And that's what
Yeah.
it speaks to.
Right, no, I really
So-
like it. Maybe it's just a matter of putting like an intro sentence that says, here's a thorough review of every element. And by the way, the ones that are truly negative are the lack of commercial space, the lack of first floor development, the height restrictions, the failure to meet form-based code. Just like give the state, no offense to state employees, I used to be a state employee. Some of my best friends are state employees, but they tend to be busy people. And just give them the heart of like all of those elements that are truly bad.
Well,
what I
maybe it's something that would be in the conclusion, like
Or-
to really,
right,
to
to
like
go
to
for it.
summarize,
Yeah.
and pulling
I
those
guess
things
from
out.
all- And I think that could be from all the sections, because the way this has been put together just so far is amazing, and I am so sorry that I did not participate, but
Well,
this
you
is
could help,
just.
you could help get it to the
This is
final
just
slide.
amazing. It was talking about a story literally of a whole year's work. And I think it's starting to build up, but the conclusion could be summary of everything and positives and negatives at the end, so.
Yeah, I think that might be a good idea.
And I think we could use.
I have
yours-
one comment.
Yeah, sorry.
No, in my impression is that in the different sections, I think we ended up kind of coalescing into consistent themes, and I think that was good. I think it would be probably a little more powerful if in some of the text, and we can correlate kind of the sections, like there's like 3 or 4 sections that are talking about, the building as a gateway to the downtown, the historic mill buildings. There are some repetitive themes that can remain in the different sections as long as they all kind of direct the reader towards a little more focus on that, as opposed to oh yeah, I already read that on that paragraph, and I'm reading it again here, and I'm reading it again here, and it happens with a couple like just 4 or 5 themes that it just takes very little to organize it, and I think it would be a little easier to read. But I think that that would start linking all the different paragraphs as opposed to having kind of, like separate people wrote it.
I think that's exactly right, Marcelo. And it's like to Trisha's point, I think it's like we just need to go through and basically like weave it together as though it's one author, because right, I mean, it was 6. Like,
Yeah.
We can give it to Deepa. She didn't have homework last time. I'm just kidding.
Thank you. It's better me.
I know we're not necessarily on small edits, but it says 5 stories, but that's actually like 5 stories of building plus 1 elevated. So
Yeah, I mean, I get it. We'll have to be clear about that
Yeah.
because the vision of the town is from the street level, not from the backside, right? And so I'm always talking about how does it look from the street, the downtown. So it's important to distinguish those two, yeah.
I mean, we
And to
could
be
have
clear about
I
what you're
think
saying.
6 stories is going to be noticed when people, I mean, like that.
I'm not disagreeing
yeah.
with you, but I'm talking about from Main Street, you don't see the 6 stories, right?
So we could just define that.
Trisha,
We could
what
literally,
did-
sorry, Amanda, we could literally just say that. We could say we expect that it will appear to be a 5-story building from the street level. However, technically, literally, it is a 6-story building. Like, we could put that very squarely in the front of the decision so that the state is not confused.
What were you
Both
going to
things
say,
are
Amanda?
true.
I mean, I just wonder, like, if the application was before us, how would we look at those stories? Like, would we look at it as 6 or 5?
You mean
We
by
reference it as
bylaw?
6 right, like we reference it as 6 in our section.
I think per bylaw it's 6.
So then my perspective is
Right,
if like per
because of
bylaw,
height
if we were
restrictions.
reviewing it, it was 6. I think that's what we say.
Although, hold on a second. So Tricia, I think when you summarized the zoning, you wrote the height is measured from Main Street. Was that in the bylaw?
That is in the bylaw,
Fine.
yes.
Yeah.
So then is it 5 per bylaw?
No, it's 3.
No. This building.
Yes.
This project.
It's 3, you measure from Main Street.
So it's 5.
So you measure the height from Main Street. So the 38 feet goes from Main Street. The 4th floor is allowed if the grade allows, right? So you can't put,
Yep.
Well,
this-
and so that, I recall, we should say that was specifically for that site, that last zoning change. And I feel like under the planning theme, that probably should be talked about.
yeah, and I think we can, but let's not get hung up on that little detail right now about, so it's something we have to make sure we're consistent with throughout the document, but that we're also not trying to say, hey, you're putting a 6-story building on the street when it's just not true, right? There's not a 6-story building on Main Street. There's a 4-story building on Main Street.
I agree.
So-
I think we have to be consistent
And
with what we're saying.
otherwise, you're undermining your credibility. So,
So you thought it was 5 stories in the back and 4 in the front. I thought it's 6 in the back and 5 in the front.
from which street are you talking about? Are you talking about Main Street or 12 feet below next to the river?
So what I'm asking is for your
Right.
zoning draft, you are measuring it from Main Street, right?
I am always
Okay.
measuring it from Main Street as
Okay.
per the bylaw.
So
For Main
that's
Street-
the answer to Amanda's question.
When they presented it on Tuesday from Main Street, they said at its highest, it's 5.
Exactly.
right.
That's what they said.
Yeah, okay.
That's right.
Which is what Trish is defining as well.
And there's basically having a basement. It's basically like having a walkout
Oh, wait,
basement on the
no,
back.
that's different. Wait, they said 5 from the front.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a little different from what you had. You had 4 from the front.
4 from the front. Well, I
So-
talk about 4.
You had 5.
Because
The
they talk
front,
about
it says at the
first-
front
No,
of the
because the
site
building- the
versus the
building
back
has-
of the site.
The building has both 4 and 5 stories, just in
Right.
different
Yeah.
locations.
Right,
Right.
and so it depends on if you're talking about the front of the site, the back of the site, and where you're viewing it from Main Street or from the river.
So I think we just need to define that
Yes.
earlier in the decision.
Yes, we just have to talk
Yeah.
about it clearly, so.
And what I was going to add is I think that, like, so far, I can see that there could be, like, you know how Amanda's section and my section had these headings A, B, C? Like, Tricia's section could be D, zoning context. right, for the project or something like that. Like, you could easily add that heading just to kind of give it.
Yeah, I mean, even these different paragraphs that I just label out, that they were bolded, like just that you couldn't, because otherwise it just looks like a real mess of text, but they could be bylaws, blah, 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 and then that have to do with this, you know,
Exactly.
so it's like, okay, do I want to read that paragraph right now or not?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Subsection.
Yes.
Kate, you want to tell us about the environmental?
So we just said environmental, so I did my best to pull together anything that I thought was related to environmental site. And
Sorry, Kate, could you turn your microphone off?
well, Trish and I in section, the way we divide it, I got environmental, and we didn't have a lot of direction, so I just did my best to find anything environmental related. I think the use restriction in Nyanza was, to me, the most important. The MIPA, that project, because Mass Housing is a state agency, it should be going through a MIPA review. That section, the environmental justice, so we learned from the comprehensive plan that all of Ashland's census tracts are environmental justice qualified, and this particular census tract is both minority income, and I particularly just, I think in general, we would want, I don't think the state's gonna do the research we did, right? That's part of our audience. That it also just requires a different level of notification by mass state law of environmental.
Of environmental issues?
Of environmental concerns, like when they're doing reviews, it actually has, it's pretty extensive document.
So are you kind of envisioning this in the context of the Nyanza site? The Nyanza Plume site is there, and we happen to be in an environmentally justice census population.
And
So
please
you
take
have
it
to-
really serious.
So you
yeah.
have to take it extra seriously.
Yeah, that's,
Okay.
the floodplain overlay, that's in our bylaws. It's also Mass General Law. The Sudbury, when I got to the Sudbury River section, you could get probably 20 alphabet soup of Mass General Law and DEP, so I decided not to try to pretend I understood them all overlapping. I found a document that I could start listing some more of those, but I'm not sure it's helpful, so I kind of left that as the general. I think there's a common sense of riverfront sensitivity and environmental. And I know the historic mill complex, the applicant that was before us said they had an exemption, but this project is tearing down most of it, so I don't know if you can have an exemption for a building that's not there. But those are, I did not find any other related environmental, except, like I said, the river, there's probably at least 10 different specifics you could cite.
So this section, when I read it, I was like, oh, this is like very bullet point, like these are all the things that relate to the environment. And one thing I imagine that this could help the state do is looking at the West Newbury decision, they're almost like saying to the state, hey, make sure that you have these conditions. And then at the very end, West Newbury was like, hey, zoning board, when this comes to you, make sure to think about these things. So this comment to me could be like subheading potential conditions to consider. Like, these are things that, we're not saying the project should be denied for these things. We're saying if the project is approved, or if it's appropriate because of these factors, they should be strong conditions. Is that what you're visualizing?
I mean, yeah, I would like to think the restriction on housing would get high. My concern about that is it's driving up the project costs, which makes them have to build more units to be economic, right? And that's exactly what mass housing does. And I don't think I don't know that they can't count it out. If we don't ask, it won't be.
Yeah, I'm just trying to visualize.
I'm sure there isn't precedence for that, but that's the biggest thing, right? This site is very expensive to build on, which makes them have to build more units, which makes it 5 or 6 stories or 4 stories and tear down historic buildings.
I'm just visualizing, like, did you envision this as like issues that would require this project to be denied, or issues that require a strong condition? Do you know what I mean?
I didn't get that far.
Okay.
I mean,
I think what, this is kind of some terminology Kate and I were using that
Yeah.
when we met, that I think maybe what is needed a little bit in here, like you said, it's the bullet pointed factual
Yeah.
information, and it's, what's needed is a little bit more of the fluff,
Yeah.
right? About like the
What are we trying to-
the
yeah.
touchy-feely part about like, okay, here's the regulation, and how does this,
Yeah.
what does this mean for our project? What does this
Right.
mean for me walking along the river in Ashland? What does this mean for floodwaters? Like, like what's the consequence to not paying attention to this?
Yeah. The
Um,
fluff for me, it's like the applicant was so excited, like, oh my God, this is gonna be amazing. It's right on the riverbed. It's like incredibly views. And I'm like, you mean views of plumes and environmental issues and all that stuff. So it's like, the way I would fluff it up is like, on the one hand, there's these perceived wonderful elements, and yet each element has a very serious, layered issue that needs to be understood,
Yeah.
right? Like, that would be the fluffy way
Yeah,
to say
the
it.
inherent, like, how does that affect me? Okay, here's your regulations. How does it affect me as a person, right? What danger am I in, or?
If I move into the site, or if I,
Or just for the town in general. It's
Yeah.
like, how do we get it out of a regulation and into something personal? I think that's
Lucia, I think that's a hugely important point because the developer was talking about, all the things that they're going to do to make it okay for people who live at that site. I mean, I personally would not sign up to live on top of a Superfund site, but I think that aside, there are community concerns. We don't know what disrupting this plume does to abutters or to, the businesses in the area. We have sensitive populations in that immediate area. Some of the fluff, I'm wondering if, I thought the section was great. I thought this was like such an important ad. And I was a little bit worried that it got buried deep in the document. So I'm wondering if, again, this is that same like single author theme, if we can add like a paragraph of summary to like Anna, almost like our section, to be able to give it's not like, I think it's really important to say this is contrary to our planning considerations. There's this like loophole that basically we've been susceptible for less than a year to 40B due to situations not in our control, and we could be back on the other side of that, just depending on how the cookie crumbles with litigation and whatever else. But also, this is a Superfund site and everything else. Like, I think that it's okay to put that, to summarize it sort of up front.
So it's not a Superfund site, but to be clear, it's like the plume from a Superfund site, but
Yeah,
we don't want to
apologies.
overplay
I
something.
laughed just because the way you said it was like so casual, and then you're like Superfund site. So I try to make notes thinking off of like the personal, right? So like when I think about that site and the flume and all of that stuff, what's around it? There's a school nearby, there's a library nearby, there's a farmer's market nearby, there's the corner spot, like all of that people and energy and pedestrian use and all of that we want to use, right? Like we want to do those things in that site. There just happens to be this thing underground right there, right? So that's important, and that's a very strong visual. Like we want the downtown to be vibrant, we want a lot of people there, and we want this to be safe, and we want to be sensitive to Ashland's history with Noanza, and we want to make sure that this is built thoughtfully to those elements.
Can I offer a
What?
devil's advocate to that view?
Say that again?
I just want to offer like a devil's advocate. I think that everything you just said is makes sense in terms of the feeling of what people can feel about this. But I don't think myself that this is a really powerful point to kind of bring everything home, because there are regulations for precisely that. The owner, the previous application was going through the steps, and the state has regulations to deal with these things. I think that if we start dwelling on something that is already regulated and they will have to do whatever remediation has to be done, I just don't think it's a very powerful point to offer how people may feel when the reality is that the project will have to deal with it anyway. So I just don't find it very good myself.
Are you more comfortable, Marcelo, just kind of focusing on the factual piece of it, less about emotions and more like, hey, as the state probably knows, this is a Noanza-related site. Here's elements that need to be addressed. Would that do you think, would that be?
I would be more factual in saying that as per the application that we previously reviewed, the process of following all the rules and regulations of the EPA and federal, state regulations just should be closely monitored. I think going beyond that is kind of wasting some energy of whoever is reading this to focus on what we really are trying to make a point of. I think the environmental part is beyond the how it plays with the rest of the project and the town. I think it should be limited to. They may say, "Oh yeah, you guys feel this way or that way." That's already taken care of. I mean, the project is going to have to do it by law.
And I agree with you, Marcel. I think I was thinking afterwards that that what I expressed really wasn't quite right. You know, it was more about, I think, trying to have the information more accessible and easier to read, to be able to read this and know what it says, and so that it has to be, like you said, kind of carefully considered, carefully monitored, or carefully going through the procedure. And then it's the thing that Kate said, that because of all these things, it is making an expensive building, and that puts a greater burden on the bylaws and upon other things, because it is it's a tricky site. And so I think it's more to those things than getting super personal about it. I agree. I think I misspoke there.
I mean,
No, and that's the point. And actually, they made that point when they made the presentation on the site walkthrough. They said this is a contaminated site. We are going to clean it up. We have to do it, but that puts a burden on the economical feasibility, which is a legitimate point, right? We just need to, I think, more balance it with the idea that recognizing that is a condition of the site that would have to be addressed by the regulations, and it will be. That point cannot be, at least this is the way I see it, kind of using that as a crutch to basically throw a 5-story wall in the middle of the downtown. It's not a fair. It's an argument, but it is an argument that is simplistic, because just for the feasibility of a project economically, is it worth ruining the urban fabric of a downtown for the rest of the town's life? And I think I see it more that from that point of view, recognizing that it is there, that it would have to be cleaned up, and that we just recognize it. It cannot be simply the sole rationale for throwing all the density that one might want to throw in.
so that's really interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way, Marcelo. In other words, what you're saying is it's such a polluted site that any developer can basically say, I'm going to do you a massive favor and clean it up for you, but give me density. And I didn't think of it that way. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword. On the one hand, we want to tell the state we have concerns about this. On the other hand, it feeds the argument that we should basically do whatever it is the developer wants to do because they're doing us a massive favor of cleaning it up. So I never thought of it that way, actually, until now. And I think that's a really interesting point.
No, and
They aren't cleaning it up. They cannot clean it up unless we deal with the plume. It's mitigating it for residential and other uses. They are not cleaning up the plume. The federal government has given us some money, and that may happen. This site is not going to be, quote, cleaned up. It's simply going to be mitigated for residential use.
So that's the part
which requires a certain level of cleanup. Of course, they're going to do what the regulations simply require them to do for that type of project, and they're not going to do less. They cannot do less, but they're not going to do more.
So this is where I think we have an ethical obligation to be straight with the state, that we're aware of these conditions. We are in a sensitive community that has a lot of history at the site, or relative to Nwanza. So I don't think we have a choice. I think we have to lay it out and tell the state that we're expecting the state and the Zoning Board of Appeals, in whatever way they have jurisdiction, to address these issues. That's it. That way we've met our obligations to the public. For me, I'm not a scientist and I'm not a regulator. But typically, science and regulations don't always meet in perfect ways. Sometimes you have to be practical in regulations, and you have to sort of do things in a way that maybe a scientist would do differently. So I think that because human beings are going to live at this site, we have to put it out there that we're literally going to be putting people near this potentially dangerous thing that is going to be regulated to the best of the government's ability. That is what we're doing. So it's a risk. I'm just going to put it out there. It's a risk, and we cannot guarantee anyone's safety other than saying the government will take care of it.
But I think that's almost like stating something that is self-evident. It's like saying, oh, we think the dirt can be dangerous if you I don't know what example I was going to say. There are facts that are unavoidable, and everybody knows them in this site. I think us trying to point out the self-evident I don't think it makes us look stronger. I think we should focus our energy on the areas where we're making a point that it's really protecting the town. This part worries me a little bit in terms of being too much energy on something that they say, oh yeah, we know that. Yeah, there's regulations. And they move on, and they take less seriously other areas that we want them to focus on more.
Well, why don't we, just in the interest of time, because why don't we set that discussion aside for a little bit and just get through the last section, which is really, I think a lot of Marcelo's original writing went into this last section. Marcelo, do you want to talk about it, or do you want, we met and divided it into 4 sections, and we each took 2, basically, so.
Yeah, no, I think people are familiar with the original concepts that I had put out, and I think this is kind of a continuation of that in terms of the site and the relationship with downtown context and the river. Those are the 2 areas, but it's actually not unlike what we've discussed in the other sections, and that's where I think we have a pretty consistent tone, which I think is very good. It just has to be kind of interwoven, like Amanda was saying before, a little bit better. But it was a matter of highlighting the impact, the physical impact of the project as proposed in the downtown and everything else that the town has been trying to develop carefully, but without sounding like, oh, this project is terrible. It cannot, nothing can be built there. It's just some attitude that some people would have, right? I mean, we've seen them in comments and things like that over the years. I think I try to make a point, almost saying that we are the realization that we all know that this town is ripe for more density, that is ripe for a larger project. But it is a site that is unlike any other, and therefore the project cannot be something that you put just anywhere. It has to be crafted very specifically to the site, to the context, to the fact that it's a gateway to downtown, the fact that it will define downtown primarily because, as proposed, it's going to be a massive 5-story wall, basically, dividing the town in pieces, and the relationship with the river that we have discussed in the past. So, but aside from that, I thought it was important to highlight some of the good ideas that this project is proposing, and there's a few that are somewhat consistent with what we have asked before. So I was trying to strike a tone of understanding the nature of the problem. How do I make a project work here? But highlighting the idea that just using that environmental excuse to say I have to do 250 units, which is kind of the way they framed it at the beginning, is one argument, but it cannot be the only argument. I think we're trying to guide them to try to rethink the project from the ground up, saying what is the context, and more the way a planner and a designer would want to see it, not just, hey, give me 250 units and throw them in there somehow. But there's historic heritage to be concerned about. There's contextual height, texture, and articulation of the architecture of downtown. And the fact that it's a gateway is very important, I think. And the continuation of the river walk and all these connections that the town is trying to kind of enhance and prepare for future generations. And I think that's, I guess, what I was trying to merge into those paragraphs.
I thought that section was very, very strong and well-written. I mean, honestly, I think this thing flows really well. We just need to create some headings and tighten a few things and create some themes. The one thing I'm curious about is at the very, very end, this is a lot. Like, it's pretty much the length of the Newbury decision, which is fine. But I wonder if at the end we should, like, give the state a summary of, like have a finished section of it, like a summary section that says, okay, here's our final position. Now that you've read all this, here, here's some kind of one paragraph of everything about the project that doesn't fit Ashland. And then, if this is approved, here's the conditions we really need you, the state, to require for the applicant when they come to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Like, these are the things that we want you to tell them to do, right? And that ending can serve this for the state to kind of know, okay, what do they actually want? And it can help the Zoning Board of Appeals to focus in on those things, because the state will tell them. The state will create guidance and essentially tell the applicant when they come to Ashland to the Zoning Board of Appeals, these are the things you need to work on. That is something the state can do. So just food
So you
for
mean
thought.
kind of at the end of all this to have a short summary that kind of puts out our major points,
Yeah,
which are pretty easy to,
squeeze together.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I think
Like a bullet point list of, like, in sum, these are the 10 things that the state must tell the applicant. Like, come back to, my understanding is the way this works is if the state approves this piece, they can tell the applicant what to work on with Ashland. They can literally say, approved, now go work on these 10 things. Like, that's my understanding of the process. Am I right, Peter?
To a point.
In the Southborough decision 2022, it came back, it was approved, and it said you shall negotiate these points with ZBA.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly. So we're telling the
It's-
state,
it's-
please
it's-
tell the
the
applicant
points
to
it's the
negotiate on these
points.
20 points.
Yes, they highlight the points that obviously the state is interested in, and I believe, yes, this document can be the driving document in creating those points of interest.
So would you say that, that the beginning portion that you and Amanda did, where, you were talking about all the work that the planning board has been doing, right, in terms of housing and in terms of, in terms of the zoning, that because we have been, it is the case, because we have been working, we have proved ourselves as working hard on this, and we acknowledge that we care about the environment, the river, maybe that comes into it. We deserve to have these, what I think are really the design conditions, paid attention to, which is about massing, which is about materials, it's about the form-based code, it's about the number of units, because those are the things about the river walk. Those are the asks. Like, the asks have to do with design, really, right? Like massing and design.
Because that's what,
It's-
as a person who was not part of all that conversation, that's what in my head, at the end of it, what we are trying to say is the design that was presented a year ago to the design that's presented is what's actually bothering us, because that was 185 units, and we are talking about 250 units now. So density was there that time. Density is there, yes, to a little bit higher level than what it was. But what's probably missing in today's design are those design elements that Ashland saw for its downtown the river walk, that kind of connectivity to the nature. That seems to be what's missing in that 40B proposal. It's unfortunate that the two architects are different, but the owner is the same. And these pages over and over again kind of go back to design differences versus history is there, yes, but history is all telling about how the design is different today to that. But I wonder if those other decisions, like you mentioned, were more factual, and that's what won us this way or that way. This is talking about design's history. It's
So
But
we followed.
but that's what I'm wondering, though, like if the argument of, we worked really hard, not only on this, but on other housing projects around Ashland. We've been working really hard on this, so,
is that
So-
powerful?
so we deserve to be listened to in this process. Is
So-
that our
so-
overall argument?
I'll be really clear
No?
what my position is. So we followed the outline for the West Newbury. And West Newbury basically says, deny the project, it doesn't fit. And these are the conditions if you decide it does. That is what I want to say. For me, the reason I started it in this way is I focused on the elements where Zoning Board of Appeals have been able to deny projects successfully on elements of working hard towards affordability already. Basically, the spirit of 40B doesn't apply. 2, downtown, that makes it unique. That's the Cape Cod example that the attorney referenced. And planning elements, exactly. So to me, we start strong. We say no. We say 40B is not for us. Look at how well we've done. This is not where 40B is meant to intervene. Ashland is not the right place. Certainly downtown is not the right place. Put it somewhere else. We love developing on 126. We love developing Avenue of the Americas. We zoned for it over there. Put it over there. That is where it belongs, not downtown. We've already done this everywhere else. So I, for one, would end it by saying, to summarize, dear state, this is not for us. Why? Because we are not the 40B candidate. For those reasons, look at our planning elements, look at how unique we've put downtown in a special place for ourselves. We've developed everywhere else. Let us continue with our incredible vision. We've done better than other communities in doing that. That's how I would start it. And then I would say, and if you approve this project, please, 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 give it some serious negotiation conditions so that the applicant is forced to come to the ZBA with a lot of work already done, addressing all of these design concerns. That would be my recommendation. And I'd rather take a strong stand.
That is really powerful than, I think, again, it looks like this is obviously a first intensive draft and we have so much material over here. So I think it's like scaling down, but what the message that you just conveyed is that powerful summary that I think needs to get added here. And there, again, like Marcel said, there are a lot of, you said it.
All you have to do is listen to it and
Right?
type it.
No, I think like Marcelo said, there's a lot of kind of the history that's getting repeated. The Sudbury River reference is getting repeated a lot. So I think there are a lot of repetition. And again, those are valid points, but it is getting repeated a lot. There was some of what Marcelo had written about the history was a little more interesting. It had a little more depth and kind of connected to today and why those buildings need to stay as is. I think there was some interesting info in that section of it. So,
So what's our next step then? I mean, I agree. I think the way you expressed it, that I get it. It's good.
So I
Yeah.
don't mind draft, so here's my thought. I think we all have our skill set and we all have some good points we made. I think this is a big undertaking for one person, obviously. And I think we started out strong with Marcelo's voice. Then we created this group project. Now we need somebody to pull it together. I think Marcelo has a very strong voice. I might have a strong voice on the conclusion. Tricia might have a strong voice in tying things together and looking for consistencies. So I think we just need to come up with another group project of cleaning this up all together. I don't think this is a one-man job or a
True,
one-woman
true.
job.
No.
But I'm more than
Just a
happy,
joke, Anna.
I'm more than happy to volunteer for a strong conclusion. I think Amanda and I worked really well together because she's a great editor. So when I write, she edits really well. So if Amanda is up for the task to help me do that, I'm happy to do that. I'm also happy to work with Tricia and Marcelo to kind of come up with headings to make this thing smooth. I think Marcelo and Tricia might be good as a team to create that connection of headings and things. I'm just assigning you guys to it because I think it seems like you worked really well together, and that might be a good project. And I don't know, I'm just throwing stuff out
What's
there.
the timeline for this
So-
one?
I'm just like, Marcelo and I working together though was throwing
I know,
out ideas.
that was me telling you to do it.
No, but it was throwing out ideas, and then I edited, and then he edited,
Yeah.
then I edited, then he edited, right? So eventually, both of our voices got
Right.
meshed together in
Yeah.
there, and things got consistent. And that's what I'm wondering about for this. I'm wondering if it's like, okay, Anna writes a conclusion and takes a pass at the whole thing. Not
Yeah,
not
I
every
could do that.
not every
Yeah.
paragraph. You're like, okay, I just can't do these bylaw sections.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I could
You-
do that with one more person. So I don't know if Amanda, you're willing to join my little effort because I think you're a good editor of me. Does that work for you?
Yeah.
But why?
I
would-
just
also
don't
wanna
don't think it's a one.
apologize.
No,
Guys,
but
for-
why wouldn't it be, and I don't know how you
Yeah.
work, but why wouldn't it be that you put a conclusion on it and you put some divisions or whatever you
Yep.
think it needs, and then you hand it to Amanda, who's going to say, okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to see what
Yeah,
Anna
that's
did
what I
with
mean.
this thing.
That's what I mean. I'll
So
give it,
one thing that,
yeah, I'll do it.
I don't want to put
And then
Deepa
she'll
on
be
the
my
spot, but
second eye.
Deepa might be able to not even wordsmithing, but the sort of repeats, and I think this could be combined because you're a little bit newer to it. Well, we all are, right? But does that make sense as a starting point? Like Deepa just says, these keep repeating, right? And maybe smush them.
Yeah,
So,
she
because
could- yeah.
I agree, it's very, I'm really proud of our board, right? This is amazing for
Yeah.
a first draft. But I think we probably shouldn't be repeating or
Too much?
should
Yeah.
minimize it, right? So there is some brainstorming about
Yeah.
our structure's going to have to change a little bit, I think, not to repeat.
I mean,
Slightly.
So there's a whole concept of primacy and recency. So the first thing you say and the last thing you say,
Yeah.
people remember the most. So
Yeah.
repetition can be really effective. We just need to be strategic about it.
Yes.
Like, what are we repeating and
Yes.
why?
Yeah.
To Marcelo's point, some themes should be repeated.
Yeah.
Like, there are certain things about this, I believe for Marcelo, and I agree with him, the river, the downtown,
Yeah.
the history, the design, these are things that are super important to this project. So I think repetition makes sense as long as we all unite around what that is. I am more than happy to give it I can do it. I can basic, I'm not gonna change anybody's like work. I might take a stab at making the environmental stuff agreeable to some of the discussions we had, so that it's less emotional and more factual and more concise. But I can take a stab at drafting it, show it to Amanda, because like I said, she did a good job editing things that I wrote that made little sense. And then we can come back. But my understanding of timeline is that this was supposed to be done like in the next few days.
We're not going to.
I don't think this goes to the state until the end of May, and I do wonder, Peter, like, can the planning board deliver this to the state directly so that we have another meeting to review this?
I'm not
Yeah.
going to give a definite answer.
Because this is
I'll
big.
I'll confirm with Michael. I'll confirm with Michael and Jen. I know they were looking for comments. I can give them a draft of this, which is obviously, I think, appropriate. And then, because I know Michael is starting to compile, I know Jen and everyone has been working to code all the comments that have been coming in. I know on Friday, tomorrow, we're going to close off the comment portal. And so then we can code any new comments and then start drafting the letter from the town standpoint.
I think it's appropriate to give them a draft so that they know what's coming. Here's what we're putting together, so they don't have to just not know what that
Yeah.
package is that they're
Yeah.
waiting. They're waiting for our input. It's going to look something like this, but this is we're still working on it. It's obviously working a lot on
What's
it.
the actual deadline for the state?
You know what?
was toward the end of the month.
It was towards the end of
I
the
can't
month.
remember what day.
I'll get the,
Is it after the 23rd, our
Yeah,
meeting?
it's like the 27th or 28th.
I'll firm that. I can firm that up tomorrow. And I do want to say, I take it upon myself, and I'll give you 100% of the credit. The West Newbury report letter. West Newbury, I did share that letter with Michael, because he was also looking for examples,
Yeah.
so
Oh,
information.
I didn't find that. She gets credit.
Okay, you get,
Yeah,
you,
Katie
Kate,
found
you get credit for it, because
Yeah.
it was a great
My
letter, right?
lunchtime research.
And so, I did pass that letter along to Michael, and he took a look at it because he was trying to do the same thing, right? And so I think it's all great, relevant information that's just flowing in,
Yeah, and also if he knows what's in our draft, maybe he will be taking some of the load off what he has to do,
Correct.
right? Instead of repeating a lot of work when we already have this
Yeah.
pretty substantial thing
Yeah,
coming.
I do
right?
think we should get this over to the select board as well, because as I was writing this, I said to Amanda, doesn't this give us ability to push the state for more flexibility, more time? There's another 40B project cooking. Like, a lot of this stuff is gonna be relevant to that project as well. So I absolutely think this should go to Michael, and it should go to the select board, and they should utilize it. Because there's a lot of misconception about what happened at the planning board.
So is everyone in agreement on that we should send a draft their way? Like this
Yes.
draft, and just get it in there, like,
Yes.
we're working on it, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would do a little bit of reorder. For example, I think zoning, it's a section by itself. So under context, I would definitely have site,
Zoning.
environmental, river. I think those are context related. The big picture, A and B makes sense. C is kind of, again, a little bit of context and site. So I think that can be easily combined with that site and things that you're talking about there. But
Well,
I
A,
think
B, and C relate to those kind of legal elements of what
yeah, I think you're talking about big picture, but the content in that big picture is
you could sort of
literally
add to it.
context that you're talking about there. But I think that zoning thing should be moved up the whole thing. It's a section by itself, because that's as powerful as the first section where you have the document and the general comments and A and B of section 2. It feels like a little bit of reordering. Then you'll realize that itself would take off a lot of the sections that feel repetitive when reading through this.
Yeah, I think, I think it does need a little bit of reorganization, and I
Yeah.
think then the zoning is powerful. I'd probably pare it down some, but I think it's powerful.
Yeah.
It's a bit much.
I'm afraid to
No.
move zoning up front because it's so dense. It's important, but dense.
Yeah. No,
So
not
when Amanda
front,
and I
front.
were drafting our starting point, we were like, we need an argument. We need the heart of the position we're taking. Like, this does not fit Ashland because we're not the intended 40B target for this is why, right? Zoning, it absolutely is relevant. I'm just concerned about moving it too high up because it's
Well, it's
No, I
kind
think
of
it's
the
a-
factual.
argument.
It's a factual in part of that document, which I think is important.
Well, I think you were, oh, go ahead, Deepa.
I think that's what is really strong about why this project is also not the right project in the context that we're
Yes.
looking for.
I
So
think what you're saying is add the reference to zoning sooner.
Yeah.
And maybe even point the state towards that section.
yeah, and even the environmental one, again, I agree with what Marcelo was saying. We don't have to add any more fluff to that. It's probably has the facts. It's okay to have facts, right? And it's more like you said, maybe these are points that they would anyway be considering as decision-making ones, but it's FYI here. Yes, we did the research as well, but I think if we could move some of these sections a little around, that will help take out repetition.
Okay.
And I'm also afraid of like some of these that we make sure that between every history that is in section C, what Marcelo has, the year and
Yeah, the years are
timelines
accurate.
are
Yeah.
all kind of needs to be consistent.
Or,
to
or
make
we
sure-
take them out in the second iteration.
Or have it consistent, and
Yeah.
if you don't have different sections referencing the same history,
Yeah.
that's when you have,
Well, what was interesting about this, I think, with your and Amanda's part, it lays out those 3 points. And And now, like, even with the bylaw section, now that I have point C has already set up my argument, my argument gets less because you've already set it up. I mean,
Yeah.
Right.
the argument is strengthened, but
Yeah.
the amount of text can
You don't need
shrink.
as
Right,
much
yeah,
details.
right,
Right,
exactly.
because you've already set up
Exactly.
the importance
Yeah.
for me versus me having to set it up
Yeah,
for
yeah,
myself.
Exactly.
And I
Yeah.
feel the same way about,
Yeah, a
Mar-
lot of the, you
I feel the
guys-
same way about
yeah.
the design section.
Yep.
It's like the bylaw
Yep.
section sets up the
Right.
design
Yeah,
section. you
basically,
know?
everyone did such a good job that we all introduced it so well that we are reintroducing the same stuff 3 times. So yeah, that can be tightened. I mean, I can give it a shot. Like I said, I think I think we did great. The one question I have is for Peter, which is, like, we kind of made up the idea of, do we need more memos? I don't think we need another memo on affordable housing unless something about the March memo is wrong.
So the March memo, and I did send out, I have an updated September memo
Yep.
from this past September.
Okay.
Obviously,
September
that's still 6 months old at this point,
Yep.
so I think I can update that and
Okay.
tighten that up.
Do we have the September memo already?
I saw it on the last email out
Okay.
today, which I circulated this
Yep.
out.
You included that one?
I included the September memo
Got it.
because I held off on them,
Yep.
since I had a newer one.
Yep.
But I can go back and update that memo.
But is the
that's not a big
September
deal.
one contradictory to this?
So I believe the
table?
September one takes out the 2010 census numbers.
Got it. So
And
does it
so at this
change it?
point,
Okay.
you know, and going back to that point, right,
Yeah.
is that why we were bouncing around between the two
Yeah.
is because obviously the 2010 census numbers, I'll say this, that the 2020 census numbers were not accepted by the state until June 23rd of last year. So it was almost
Okay.
2023.
Got
That's when
it.
that's when the state actually accepts those numbers.
Okay.
And that is due because obviously it takes a long time to calculate all the data. And then what the number you really have to kind of bake into it is that it's all about yearly, year-round housing, right? And so a lot of the cities and towns, such as on Cape Cod, for example, they have to subtract out, okay, which houses are not occupied all the way around. So long story short, the state does not adopt the 2020 census numbers until June of 23. And so that's why all the memos leading up
Did not have that.
always included
All
the
of it.
2010
Got it.
census numbers and
Yeah.
then the 2020 census numbers.
Okay.
Because what we're always trying to do, and we're always trying to juggle, okay, what's going on here? Because the biggest thing that happens is in the 2010 census, right, when we were doing all that data configuration, is that you were adding in the 40 units that Cirrus brought to the table, right? But you were not adding in the 398 yearly units that were built in 2018, right? And so then with the 2020 numbers, yes, those 40 units were already included, but then you're gonna jump up because you're
Right.
gonna add in all of the units that were built over that last decade.
Gotcha. So to summarize, I think that the table is accurate in the sense that it's not like it's wrong. It's accurate for the time, and the new one in September is just like a revised version of the same
Correct.
thing.
Yeah, the table is correct for the
yeah.
time and for the conversations we were having,
good.
looking to forecast the SHI of the community.
Yep. So then we, if you have time, we could create a more updated recent memo, but it sounds like it's not necessarily needed if we have a September one.
We have September one. I
So-
can take a look at it and
Yeah,
proof it.
we
That's
might
not a
be
big
okay.
deal. I think the effort's already there.
Yeah.
And the verbiage is already there.
What about a memo on investment into downtown? Like, I just couldn't find easy reference point to be like, hey, state, this is all the stuff we've done to make downtown amazing in the last 5 to 10 years. Like, do we have any summary
So
or
I'm
anything
thinking,
like that?
like, we as a community need that for the packet, right? And so even better if the select board,
If the select board does it, then we can reference
and then we
their
can reference
document.
it,
So
right?
I've
Yeah.
been working with Michael, just helping him answer
Yeah.
small questions like when did we first adopt ADDA zoning? I found that obviously that was 2000. Actually, I think it was 2006. And then, but obviously gets revised again. So I know Michael is starting to bake in some of those big ticket, obviously the
Yeah.
investments, such as the streetscape, X, Y, and Z, and kind of tell that story. So I know he's working on that within his letter, but I can kind of try to put something together.
Okay.
Just as maybe a quick timeline.
Yeah, like
About
this is all the
what's
investment
going on,
downtown.
regarding the zoning, investment, streetscape, tribal trail, obviously, the
Beautification.
beautification elements such as the river walk, and kind of go from there.
I mean, I think if we could get it in a like budget, like, so just, it could even be simple, like in the river walk, the date and the budget. It's going to, it goes with
Yeah,
that planning
that would
theme.
look cool.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
maybe, what it did.
Yep.
Yeah, I think, I can try to work on something of that nature.
Because then it shows the state, look, we've planned. We
Yeah.
literally have focused all of our effort to make downtown look incredible.
But you're saying it might be a select board document,
Yeah.
right?
No, it would be, yeah, I think,
I mean,
A select board document.
that we're
reference.
referencing, because the whole
Yes.
town is, we're working toward this in planning, and the whole town is, other elements of the town
Yeah.
are working on this as well.
Yeah, we just need
Right.
something like that to exist to point
but
to.
I think that's what I think ideally it comes from one of the other groups working, and that we can just add it, because it needs to be in there. If no one else is doing it, we have to figure out how to
If
get it
no one else is
done.
doing it, then we will create the
Yeah.
memo.
But
But if
if it's-
someone else does it,
I think we're working towards it. I'm happy to, I can talk to Michael about it, and I can start pulling together some data and some points, and like I said, create that bullet point
yeah.
memo to say these are the investments that have been made in what they have done.
And this
for
memo,
Ashland.
again, just to be clear, it's not just a memo for us. That would be a exhibit. That would be
Yes.
something that would go as a
100%,
Yeah,
yeah.
we're
That's
just
just not
to the
specific
state.
to the planning.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think anything that I would create, and I think the select board, who are well aware, and I think I did the SHI memo for Michael at first, right, to give an understanding of what is the outlook, what is the forecast, and so I believe he is also mentioning in his letter, and the town will be mentioning their overall letter, what the SHI and what the and how Ashland has been looking to make strides, right, in meeting the 10% affordability rate.
I was envisioning that the March SHI memo is an exhibit, like this, because it's a very detailed, multi-page SHI document. I was also envisioning that this is an exhibit, the March 7th document. And then if we have something from the current project to show how different it is, that's similar to this layout, that would be cool.
I think you reference all the
Yeah.
project, like, I personally think that you reference, I'm sorry, I'm reading this is
Oh,
the
I
West,
did
this is the-
reference
this is
it.
the West Newbury project.
Yeah, well, what I
I would
mean
think
is-
when you reference
Yeah.
the application that came from Mass House, like, whatever came
Yep.
to Mass House, like,
They see it.
our
Yeah.
letter is against the application that is
Right.
in front of mass housing,
Yeah.
right? And I think their site plan is obviously a big ticket, or the big ticket item, or one of the big ticket items that the mass housing is
Reviews, yeah.
reviewing. So I think for us I think all we
We
have
don't
to
need to
do is
attach
do a
it, yeah.
blanket, in reviewing your application, the application in front of you, we see this.
It's just very powerful, the difference, because I'm assuming this other thing is gonna look a little different.
So should we, so in that argument on the design side, yes, they have a proposal, but there was a history to where, before this came along.
Before the
which
March
looked
7th.
so similar to what is getting presented now. Should we pull that out as well as saying, this is where we began 2 years ago, because that itself was a 1-year story, to what the town as a collaborative approach landed up here. So would that be of value of to why the design that's getting presented is getting so much pushback? That's purely design. All the other elements seems
I mean, it
like
can
we
be a
have.
reference, but I personally, as planning board, do not want to bring that into planning board stuff, except like if it's appropriate for context, but.
It was a planning.
If you guys can find it, because
well,
you
it
were
didn't come in
involved in
front of-
that, I didn't go there because I felt like the stronger point was like, here, we are the planning board, this is what we did. But if you guys feel like, because you were involved in that project, if you feel like the
No,
prior design was.
But we had, the
Yeah.
planning board saw an earlier
Oh, I
version
thought
of
you were talking
this.
about the one way before.
Well, it was all similar.
Yeah.
We couldn't get them, we
Yeah.
could not get them to budge, and finally
Yeah.
we were like, okay, let's just vote no. You know, basically, that's what because they would not budge on, they would not budge on anything. And then they said, whoa, let us have another shot. And then they came back
But
with
that's
this.
this.
Yes,
Yeah.
and then they came back with this, and we were like, oh. But the first version that all of us saw, was not
You're talking about the
this.
flat roof ones, right? At one point of time,
Yeah,
there was like
I mean,
flat roof version. It looked like
I mean, it had some really odd stuff on it.
building out of like a city, Framingham City, and we all kind of, in my head, that's
So the
what
reason
it
you're
is.
bringing it up is you're thinking like, does the state benefit from seeing that we're moving back to to something not so good?
Correct.
And I think I don't know about you guys, but I think that too much focus on the past
Yeah.
pollutes it and takes away from the fact that we actually progressed towards this that was positive. I don't know if I would go too far back. And I also don't, I had to be very careful drafting this because I didn't want to come across as making conclusions without proof. So going back multiple years to say, I'm struggling with this because I don't know how far back we can go in a credible way to draw conclusions.
I don't think we need to
So-
go back and describe what happened there,
Yeah.
but I know I'm pretty sure anyway, did a lot of edits, that in like Marcelo and I's text, we mentioned that we worked together with the owner.
Yeah,
To
to get
come,
there.
to get
Yeah.
there, that it wasn't like,
Out of nowhere.
Yeah.
that we really worked over a number of discussions, and I don't remember how we put it, and maybe we emphasize that a little bit more. We have a
Yeah.
little bit more hints that, hey, this wasn't the first
Yeah.
iteration, but we got there.
And I
you know,
think that
kind of
also
thing.
supports the last few pages of the site and context and
Yeah.
why it's so important because of what the product that we got when we really went through that process to see where it began and why
Yeah.
the town was so against it to begin with. There was a lot of positive.
A lot
this
of
one. So
positive.
that 1 year journey was just not them coming back with revisions, but the town also kind of participating, and they were all excited about where this stopped. But that's where we began. So having that little bit of hint of that for those last few pages exhibit, I think that will help, but that's,
So, do you want to take a stab? I'm trying to think of how to pull this together. It sounds like you and Marcella already had some of that in your section.
I don't think we need to show the
Yeah.
pictures of it and get it confused that way. I think it's just in the text that there were, to me, because I don't want to be looking at something that,
Goes
yeah.
all the way. Do you feel like there's a piece to what you and Marcella drafted that could naturally fit that you could edit?
I'm going to make a note to look for
Okay.
those things,
Okay.
to make sure they get pulled out a little bit
Okay.
as an important part of the history.
So,
yeah, I would have thought having picture would be easier than reading, but again, think about it, maybe it's easier to just describe it.
so here's the thing. There's a bunch of documents we're still looking for. Like, we're looking for Trisha's color drawing thing,
I'll have to try to.
and, right?
Yeah, it's like, I didn't do the drawing.
Oh,
Richardson did the drawing.
Richardson did
This-
the
The same
drawing.
person that did this
Okay.
did that drawing, but it
Okay.
was a plan, and I think it was done before it came before the planning board. It was
Maybe I
a
can
result.
search for my emails to see if I
Okay,
can.
it was a
Is it-
result of our discussion asking for a conceptual drawing, a conceptual site drawing.
That
So-
talks about the history of Ashland
Yes.
and why that gateway is
Yes.
important.
so if
I
you,
may
if
have
you find
copy.
that,
Yeah.
and if you can also find the old one
had
that
it
you're
digital.
referencing, what I'm saying is find that
Was it-
stuff
oh, okay.
It might
and
have
bring
been
it to
printed.
the next
It might have
meeting
been
and we can
printed.
figure it out.
Yeah,
I remember,
yeah.
So,
it could have been printed because it was hard to read.
so to summarize our next steps, it sounds like
Dense.
I will take a stab at walking through this whole thing, adding headings, cleaning up a few sentences, tightening things so that we're not repeating the same introduction stuff. I'll also try to take a stab at the conclusion, and Amanda, I volunteered, and she seemed to say yes, will be my second set of eyes as an editor to my stuff. Then it sounds like Trish is gonna find a spot in her section to maybe tighten up this particular point of prior efforts. I understand Peter is going to talk to the select board or Michael about a investment in downtown memo of some kind that we can reference,
Yeah, and I'll update the SHI.
and an updated SHI if necessary,
Yeah,
and
and
we'll get
I'm-
the September memo too. And then at some point, we have to decide what is a reference document versus exhibit. Do we want to like attach documents for the state, not just reference? And I guess I can
I
take
think
us.
that's going to come along the next draft, because we're going to say
Okay.
we should refer to that here,
Yeah.
see document, blah. I think
Can I
that makes
ask
sense.
you guys for a favor? Like, for your sections that you already drafted, you reference documents. Can you send me, I think that's allowed?
Yeah.
Can you send me the reference documents to add to the material references? I could probably steal them right from your drafts. So I could do it
I
myself.
think I just referenced the bylaws.
Okay. And you know what? Don't worry about it, because I think
can-
yours, you list them all. I can just cut and paste. Unless there's some document you missed.
Well, no, I mean, I personally think the deed restriction should be one of the documents that goes with it, because I think, I can almost say for sure that this board is being probably more thorough on background research than Mass Housing, who probably has 500 things to look at, right? So if we're presenting, I think it's important to give the stuff we have.
Like, you're visualizing giving them all of these, or
I-
just some? Like, all of the reference documents?
I mean, at least listed as a reference, if not an
Yeah,
attachment.
yeah,
I don't
no,
know.
I'll
Yeah.
list it as
Yeah.
a reference because you referenced it, for sure. Okay, I think we have a plan. And then I guess Peter's gonna talk to the select board about timing of our deliverable, because we're not gonna be done until our next meeting.
And provide them with a draft.
This draft.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
this
we already
draft.
have.
So they can get a sense of what's
Yeah, I
coming.
can I'll talk to Michael tomorrow and get a sense of what's going on from his point, and if something obviously changes, I'll email it to board as soon as possible.
And you'll give them this and the select board.
Yeah, and I was just filling in some of these dates under massing and scale.
Oh, can you send me those?
Yep,
Okay.
yeah, I just have them written down. You know what, I'll go in tomorrow and I'll fill
Yeah,
them in.
or you can fill them in and send me an amended
Yeah, I'll
new
just send, I'll
version.
just, exactly, I'll just do
Yeah.
that. I just can't find when the library was restored.
Great.
So I'm happy to I'll be like the clerk here when people need to find stuff or other references, or I think if someone subs out a little section to me, it's still not violating the open meeting law if I don't communicate, like, I will, whoever's writing, I'll volunteer.
I mean, one thought, you had mentioned, Deepa has a fresh eye. Like, if you and Deepa want to take a look at the draft and come up with, I don't know, a few paragraphs you want to tighten and bring those edits to the next meeting, like, just because I'm drafting something with Amanda doesn't mean that you guys can't, we don't want to have two different drafts necessarily, but
Is there any chance of before then getting a new cleaned up version from whoever's doing that, which I think is you and Amanda, just to then have other people start brainstorming more? Just asking, I know.
yeah.
I know.
I don't think this is as bad as the first push.
No,
So, but I'm afraid to make any promises because my kid graduates high school
Yeah.
in 2.5 weeks.
yeah.
So, but I will do my very best, like in the
But
next
you know what I'm
week.
saying, I
Yes.
think it's easier, so the problem is like if we do something and other people, then it's.
Yeah.
it'd be
Yeah, I
the
don't-
At this
same
point, I
thing.
don't think we should be rewriting anything.
Exactly.
We should just
I
be
think we're just gonna
literally
clean this
starting
up.
to.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you say clean up, also, I don't think we should go, because points that's there on this paper is pretty relevant.
Don't cut
so
too much.
don't go.
Yeah. I'm not gonna go
I don't
overboard.
think-
I
yeah.
will never cut anybody's work unless like I show the track changes. So I understand the idea of like tightening and
We're gonna
moving
have
things
to, though.
around.
We're
gonna
No,
have
I'll
to
move
do
stuff
that,
around, but
yeah,
I'll be very
yeah.
clear what I'm moving, and I'm not gonna just delete and make
No,
it
it's
disappear.
also for you to spend
Yeah,
time on it.
I'll just
like,
leave it there with track changes.
Yeah, I don't think you need to, I don't think you need to go through the entire document and I think,
Okay.
but, because I don't think we have a
Yeah.
week for you to do this. I think it's like, go and do the things you were going to do,
Okay.
which is basically the conclusion,
Yes.
get
Yep.
your speech in there.
Right.
Have Amanda
And then
take,
add headings.
add
yeah.
headings, or maybe Amanda's having the
Yep.
headings, right? Get your part done, pass it on. It's not going through everything with, and then
That's
what?
fine.
Because when I
Yeah.
get to my part, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to streamline mine because of what they wrote in theirs.
I see what you're saying.
I think it needs to turn
fine.
really
Yeah, I
quickly
mean,
from
that's
person to
kind of-
person to person to person.
That's fine. That's
So-
fine. So you're saying give it over to Peter as soon as possible so he can get it to the rest of the group
And
to
you can
start.
start kind of.
Okay. That's fine. And then you guys can all start getting your changes over to Peter.
Yeah,
I
so you have
understand.
less time, but much
Yeah.
less to do
That's
as
fine.
well.
So then
Okay.
me and Amanda can give it a shot in the next few days. Amanda, is that exciting? Next few
Yep.
days? All right. Okay.
That's great. And I also apologize for misspeaking on Gloom. I apologize.
Oh,
No, I just want to be clear because
No,
we
yes,
don't-
now I also want to be clear.
next few days is good because it's fresh. So, okay.
Okay, so we have a plan for that. Everyone good?
Yay.
We also said in this section, we were going to talk about a response to an email that kind of said this was in front of the planning board for 3 years and also in the newspaper. And they're sort of related to me because the letter from the townsperson cited the newspaper article that it was they got frustrated with the planning board, and we actually have a written document saying just the opposite from the applicant's attorney. And I feel like, well, as the clerk, I'm just asking for what we're going to do to respond to that specific email, but I think it's also a broader issue given publicity and things said.
I can just tell you right now, Kate, that from a factual standpoint, this application was filed on July 19th of 2022.
And it's date stamped July 25th.
Yeah, I think the misperception is just that, the project was in front of the town long before that. Deepa and I were part of it. I mean, but even there was already a full proposal when you and I first saw it, right? So it's just a misperception, I think, about when it came to the planning board and when it was in the town as a whole. Truthfully, it was in the town a long time. It wasn't in front of the planning board a long time. So I think it's a clarification, right?
But it's important for, I think, our board, but also the town, because when people get this perception that the board, I think our board has been extremely professional since the board that I've worked with since I've been on, is not saying, everything's always perfect, but we try very hard to be very professional and follow the bylaws and do our
Right.
job.
So there's one thing about responding to an email from a singular person. That doesn't sound like that. What's the second part of that? Because the responding to an email to one person is just saying, hey, you got some of these facts wrong, and here's the actual facts, and the rest
So-
is kind of like, it's a resident to me blowing off some steam, right? And we don't usually have a big follow-up memo for someone, a single resident blowing off some steam, right? So that's one thing.
I didn't
That's-
ask for a memo, I just said, I think we owe
a memo was,
response.
I know, a memo was mentioned before. So, but you're talking about, it's different than that. You're talking about something besides that single resident. You're talking about something else.
Can I just be clear, as clerk, I think that we would continue our tradition of responding to people who write to the board. So that's the primary thing.
Agreed.
So I
So-
cannot do that right now under the agreement that we have as a board of.
So what if we do this? So the good news is this is going to the select board. So I feel like that's helpful because the select board can start to see the draft and our position, which is helpful because I don't know about you, I don't go to every select board meeting and they don't go to every planning board meeting, and this will help them see some context. The other thing, I'm okay with Kate trying to take a stab at drafting a response to that person that's succinct. It maybe references some of the very basic factual
Yeah.
things like, hey, just a heads up, we only had the project for about a year. Here's what the attorney said when it was, continued. Just some context,
Yeah.
like something very short, and maybe show that to us. And if
Okay.
it's concise, I would be okay with that kind of short factual response.
And if you don't want to respond to it, I am happy to work on it with Peter. We can make the.
No,
we
I
can-
hate to wait 2 more weeks, but it's fine because sometimes,
I think if
people-
you literally take the
Yeah,
sentence
no,
right
I-
out of here,
yeah.
that's like the factual sentence,
Yeah.
like, 2 points, it's not 3 years, it's 1.
yeah,
And heads up, it was a positive collaborative thing, see language from the continuance, like,
I mean, I guess the other thing, we've done it before that I've worked with Trish, and then we just send it out. It doesn't need to be brought back to the board.
yeah, you guys could look at
Could do
that.
that.
And as far as like.
One thing I would say, kind of echoing what Tricia mentioned, I personally don't think we need to respond to these emails myself. I think we cannot take everything that personal. Everybody has a lot of opinions and a lot of comments are out there. I think everybody can see the public meetings if they are so interested, see what we said and we didn't say. And I personally, I don't see, I don't feel, attacked by the email. And I think the board needs to be so defensive about the simple facts of a complicated process.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with Marcelo. I don't feel like, to me, it sets a little bit of a bad precedent, but I'm open, I'm happy to do a simple response, simple data response to the email and leave it at that.
Yeah, well,
you know.
and that's in keeping with what we usually do. So I feel like it's professional to acknowledge an email to the board. And that's kind of where, that's how we've been doing it for 2 years now.
Sounds like we have a plan.
Yep.
Two points, factual. Sounds good. Sounds like a good plan.
So we'll do that. We'll take care of it.
Great.
Cool.
Good work.
Is there anything else we need to do under 10 to 60?
Great job, everybody.
Is there anything else?
I was just going to mention that the email
Oh,
from Lynn
that's what it
Morahan.
was.
And so in everyone's binder, this is and I know it's late, just not to spend too much time on it, but it's right ahead of the minutes. It was an email
Oh,
from our
yes.
fire department. And
Yes.
we are already moving in this direction, requiring and asking for the developments, obviously multi-story developments, multi-unit developments to go into more of an electric avenue. No pun intended, electric avenue. To you like that one? To use obviously electric stovetops, electric cooktops.
Born in the 70s.
And so there are ongoing issues at multifamily units that will have a gas ranges, and kids are bumping into them a lot, and there's gas leaks, and the fire department's getting called out. And so the fire department just requests from the planning board side of things that, obviously with the stretch code 2 is going to push everything in this direction, that obviously multifamily developments, multi-unit developments use more electric cooking appliances.
So I think this came up when someone asked the different departments for responses for feedback to this.
Yes.
I don't think it has anything to do with our letter right now. It's much too specific.
No. Yes.
But it's just, the memo was written. It makes a lot of sense. It's something we should keep track of in all of our projects as a,
So,
Yeah.
so is that something we have to can or should work to codify?
you mean like in the bylaw?
Yeah,
Yeah, maybe.
because we can ask, but if we don't have,
Yeah.
if we don't have a bylaw, we can't,
Require it for a site plan review. Yeah.
Not for a site plan review. Yeah, so we can make a note of that, but I'm just saying we don't need to go down that long tunnel today. Maybe it's just a short tunnel because it's not relevant to what we're doing today, right? So let's,
yeah.
just
I'm
came
worried
across-
about, like,
yeah.
It just came across.
Kind of
Let's just
come
put
up,
it,
and then all of a sudden we're not prepared to deal with them because we didn't make a plan, right? We need to do a bylaw.
also, we just adopted a new stretch code.
Yeah.
And so I think
Yeah.
the new stretch code also is going to, stand on its own. And that is pushing everything to electrify. And so I think it's just a matter of maybe seeing how the new stretch code plays out and just making a note of this request from our fire department. If we do need to codify it, then we can cross that bridge at this time.
Yeah, well, we can look to codify it, but we're 6 months from there, and we got other fish to fry before that time, so.
Then the other thing is the meeting minutes, and then that's it.
They look good to me. The April 11th ones?
You push it back, public comment again.
Oh,
Oh, we will open public comment right now.
Through the zoning. No, it's my turn. Mark Tassoni, 49 Hawthorne Road, Ashland, Mass. Going through 4.5 pages of 7 voices. Only did about a half a job because the town is more than zoning, more than housing, no, the mill downtown. The only part of this I actually liked was Trish's, the bylaws. That's the only part I actually didn't like out of all this. But it still needs more detail, more data. You talked throughout housing, the mill, but that's not the only part of town that lives in town. I'm going to go through Nyanza. Thank you, Katie. But Nyanza is not just a bylaw, but it's a history. How we understand that in a new way of saying, especially in the where it says since in the MEPA MGL 306162 L. Since the project requires a state agency, yes, those are only people that should do this, not this board. Then I went down and saw what I was hoping would be talked on, but wasn't, the masses and scales. That is what this town is. Understanding what it is for the past 30 years. What I have heard here tonight was you understood, but you only understood your own minds and what you read, and you deleted in what was text in for zoning for your own words to make it sound right to you. This is why I said a couple of meetings ago, I know about zoning, test me on it. This right here would be a B minus at best, because it's not thoroughly connected to everything. It's just in your own minds, in your own voices, and how you took each part. Zoning board has to take everything. Yet, you did this without zoning board's assistance. That's another reason why I'm against this. And it's only have to work. Zoning board, it was said at the housing forum that the zoning board's going to have a lot of public meetings about the bill, the 40 UVs and all that. Yet, you put in your own minds, before actually they came through, that you're going to want this. So you're going to try to convince the zoning board that we made these changes, and we want you to think this way as we're thinking right now. It needs more work. That's all I'm going to say.
if I could, Mark, thank you. I think I understood your comment as, you know, why are you doing this on your own and not more with the Zoning Board of Appeals? So that's more of a procedural thing where eventually this is for the state, and eventually when it goes to the Zoning Board of Appeals, in many communities, planning boards do work actively with the Zoning Board of Appeal. Like the Zoning Board of Appeal might ask us to prepare something for them later, at a later phase, once it's in front of them. It's not in front of them yet.
So why use zoning appeal things for your own to get through before the state makes it official?
Because we have, that is a resource that we can show the state that the zoning supports our view. That's
And
why.
if the state asks, well, did you go get any sort of suggestions from the zoning board themselves? How are you going to answer that?
The state can ask the applicant to do things. The state could also ask the town to do certain things regarding this project.
But
And then
this-
we will follow the state's instructions.
But
as a
this
town.
is before the state even knows that you came up with this, right?
So the state wants to hear our thoughts, just our thoughts.
Then why
From the
wasn't
planning
this,
board.
then why wasn't this given to the state before you brought it up to the agenda?
We need to draft it
We're
first.
drafting it,
and then we
Mark,
give it to the
and
state.
then we're gonna, the town, so right now, the town within the 40B is in a comment period. And so the town and select board and, you know, the town manager through the town manager are all sending in comments. And that's why on the town's website, there's been a portal and all citizens have been pouring in comments to that portal. You know, as a town, we are coming up and we're going to create a letter, right? To state that this is the opinion of the town, right? And I think the planning board is trying to create our own letter. And that's why we would not submit it to the state unless it's discussed
When
by
we're
this
ready,
board
yep.
and when we're ready.
So, I'm still going on my train of mind for this. This is why I said a decent amount of time ago, use me, I can help. Peter knows I had a couple of, 3/4 of these zones in this, in what we have now. The form-based code, the stretch code, and now moving up with the sustainability for the future.
Thank you, Mark.
So I'm saying to Peter there, you have my email. Pass it around to the board. If you people want to get in touch with me, we can communicate. But this is not the way to communicate on your own before the state and before ZBA. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we are seeing no other hands. We are back to the meeting minutes.
I don't have any changes.
Neither do I.
All I have, and there's a lot of text here, but I think the person does generally a good job at it. On page 4, I just need to correct the spelling of my name, right there. Boom. No big deal. I'm even willing to change at this point. The spelling of my name. Okay. Any other questions about the meeting minutes? It's pretty,
I like the precision of when I left the meeting at 8 PM.
I thought it was 8:01. but
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Very precise. All right, I'll make a motion to approve the April 11th, 2024 minutes with the change that Tricia proposed.
Is there a second?
Second that.
And a roll call vote?
Deepa Venkatai.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcel Rahona, aye.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
And Tricia Kendall, aye. So those are approved. Are there any reports that anyone feels that are critical this evening? Anything we need to know?
On the MBTA Communities Act, I have a memo, and I know we're not going to get to it tonight, and there was stuff, emails, so I just printed a bunch of copies, and I can send it to Peter to send. But it's just a work plan to be cognizant of the timing. Like, there's basically let's say we're all busy on this now, so there's like 6 months till the next town meeting, and when you count like the hearing time, the warrant time, so I want to just make sure we keep that on our radar screen and how that's going to work. And I think it's really important to make sure the public knows about our work plan. I think it's on us to make sure that we're extra communicative to the public to not turn into a situation we aren't happy with in November. And I think that could happen just based on what other communities are happening. So all of that are, anyway, that's.
Yeah, great. We'll obviously take a look at that. We've already kind of talked, we haven't gotten together since it was town meeting just last week. Just been too exhausted. But we have already talked about what those initial discussions within our group, what are the things we want to start digging into? Because we're not planning just to sit around waiting to see how things happen. We're planning to
Yeah.
work and then see how things unfold that starts to influence that work. That's our plan, right? That
But
we
I think
continue.
that needs to be communicated as the work's ongoing.
Yeah, that's
right?
fine.
Yeah.
We can make reports just like I
Yeah.
make reports here, basically. That's why I added that to the
Yeah.
agenda, to be a regular update item. That's why
Yeah.
I added it. So to be like I said, a regular update on this as we move forward, so.
I do like the outline of the potential tasks on the bottom, and I think it'll be helpful for the working group to review this, and maybe in the next update to give us sort of the plan that the working group has, like, does this outline make sense to the working group? Like, at some point, we do need to get the select board into the process, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean,
And
just first,
start a forum process.
yeah, I mean, obviously, first glance, these are the things we talked about before, and these are the things we've done in our process. And we talked about doing more forums, and we've talked about, running through the numbers and, and those kind of things. So it's nice to have it in writing so that everyone can kind of remember those things. They are always on the forefront of our agenda. So, but that's a good thing to refer to.
Yeah,
So
I
thank
will
you.
apologize, I didn't know people were remotes. And I also just didn't want to flood Peter and Alvaro with more stuff today, and I just finished this today, so I will send it to Peter to send out.
Time flies by, is all I'm gonna say. So 6 months is not a lot of time.
I know. We're still trying to recover from last week, and we have to start up again. So. That's how it goes. All right, so anything else from the various
Nope.
groups? Okay. I don't think I have anything either. Any essential updates or anything?
No, I don't
we
have
should
any,
know?
essential updates. Whittemore State subdivision, we had a meeting today with the contractor. Hopefully, we're gonna get that project back on track, which would be good. That we're trying to push to make everything right. 100 Chestnut Street, Tyvek's going up. Windows are going in. I was on the site less than a week ago, maybe actually 2 weeks ago at this point. They're starting to order materials. I'm going to go up on site. All the materials were ordered with the architect's approval, going back and looking at the approved colors and the schemes and all that stuff. And so I'll be up on site, more routine up there. And then that's really all I have. Starbucks seems to be plugging along. I was out there the other day, and I know the cultural
They're not
council.
plugging in another electrical thing, are they? Plugging along.
No.
Plug. Sorry.
Stop, Anna.
You got me. Yeah, they're moving. I think, coming from Starbucks, we're gonna probably see a late June, early July opening at this point. But there is still they're still doing some inside work, build out, and then I know they have to obviously hire staff, train staff, and so that's why I'm hopefully saying early July at this point. So other than that, that's all I have.
All right, then, I guess I will make a motion that we adjourn the meeting at 10:50 PM.
I'll second that.
Roll call vote.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcelo Hona, aye.
Catherine Jersey guy.
And
Please, aye.
Tricia Kendall, aye. Everyone should have an opportunity to adjourn. All right, thanks, everybody.
Have a great night.